Hey there, freaks. I hope all is well on this beautiful Tuesday morning at the end of February here in 2019. I have an incredible conversation with Misir Mahmudov for you guys today. We dove deep into Bitcoin as time, the morality or perceived morality of Bitcoin or amorality of Bitcoin, and a bunch of other topics. I think you guys are going to love this one. But before we get to the interview, I would like to introduce you to our recurring sponsor, BlockFi. It's tax season, guys. It's coming up. It's coming up real fast. Got about a month and a half, which means it's time to think about the crypto taxes. I know you don't want to, but you have to. Don't fall into the trap of selling your crypto to pay your taxes. BlockFi helps crypto investors by providing U.S. dollar funding using your crypto as collateral. Put Bitcoin in BlockFi, collateralize your loan. They send you back U.S. dollar. It's a pretty seamless process. You can then save your Bitcoin as long as you're paying that loan back and get the cash that you need to spend on whatever you need at that point in time. So you get your crypto back at the end of the loan. It's that simple. BlockFi customers use them for anything from buying a home to funding a business. So visit blockfi.com/tales from the crypt to learn more about using your crypto without having to sell today. That's blockfi.com/tales from the crypt. Got a special offer for you freaks. Again, really think you guys are going to enjoy this conversation with Misir. Let us know what you think about it on Twitter. If you're liking it, make sure you share it. Please subscribe, rate, review, do anything. It helps us produce more of these episodes. So peace and love. I know you guys are going to enjoy it.
Tales from the Crypt.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt. It's your boy, Marty Bent, on a Friday afternoon in a relegation studio here in Brooklyn, New York. Big week of content. This is the fourth recording I've done all week. 4 out of 5 days. I've recorded something. I hope my voice holds up for this one. I was out late at a dinner last night. Imbibed too much whiskey. But happy to be here now with my guest. Very excited for this conversation. This man has written a few very thought-provoking pieces over the last few months. Dropped one this week, actually. I'd like to introduce all of you freaks to Bitcoin researcher, writer, legend, Misir Mahmudov. Misir, welcome to the pod.
Thank you very much, Marty. It's a great pleasure to be here, and I'm a great fan of your show. Definitely a freak as well.
Thanks, man. It's love to have freaks on when when the chance comes. So let's jump into this. Obviously, you've been getting more into Bitcoin in the last year. In particular, you're a very astute tweeter. You're very good at going viral on Twitter with Bitcoin sense and Bitcoin threads in particular. So I wish that's a skill I wish I had. So just want to tip my cap there. So how'd you get into Bitcoin? That's what I'm curious to learn. How'd you get into this? Did your brother force you into it?
Well, he didn't necessarily force me into it, but like I'm sure that anyone can imagine that having Murad as your older brother, it's just inevitable. Sooner or later, you are also going to be very much down the rabbit hole, studying and learning all about Bitcoin. And I think that for some time, I was kind of resisting this because he was already into Bitcoin much earlier than I was. And he was like telling me about it, and I was like, that's cool, that's interesting. But I was definitely more focused at the time, at least, on startups. I was working on a couple of startups with some of my friends from college, and we built a couple of apps on iOS, Android, and that was all really cool, and I enjoyed that until a certain point.
What kind of apps?
So my latest one, and probably the most successful one that we had, was an app that basically allowed you to know and be notified of when your friends are in the same cities as you are. So let's say you travel to Amsterdam next week, and before you even go there or when you arrive there, you basically get a notification that 4 of your friends are also here. But it would be like they wouldn't know your exact location, but just the city. So unlike, I don't know what Facebook does or what Snapchat does, it was just more general, less creepy, and more palatable to just users, you know?
To an OPSEC focused Bitcoiner in particular.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, dude, I was on Snapchat the other day and accidentally scrolled to the map where you can see your friends that share the
That's
location. I was
crazy.
like, holy shit, you idiots. Like, what are you doing?
I know, right? Like, yeah, no. I don't
And
really use Snapchat, but when I did, I always had that, like that function turned off.
Yeah, I use Snapchat for literally 3 people, my sister, my brother, and my cousin. And my brother and my cousin, in particular, have like a fat camp, and we use Snapchat to prove that we're working out and stuff.
Nice.
But
Keep each other motivated.
Yeah, I was checking one of our fat camp snaps this week and came on that map, and you're able to like scroll out and like scroll in at any point of the world and see where these people are. Like,
Yeah, it's definitely
down
really
to the
weird.
block. Yeah.
So we were basically trying to create something that wasn't necessarily like that, but was more user friendly, and because nowadays like people become more and more aware of the fact that their data is constantly stolen, manipulated, sold for money by all these companies. And interestingly enough, there was good feedback, and people were interested. And I remember like when I just launched it, like maybe I just maybe sent like five of my friends like the link to the download, and within like hours I had like 500 people from my university already using it, which was really cool. And the app
Young Zuck, baby, let's go.
wait until the end of the story. And like it was really nice because the app was in like top 200, I think, in the travel category on App Store. And we were constantly making it better, blah blah blah, always trying to iterate, doing all the typical startup stuff. And then one day I get an email from so we were using Facebook API in order to basically so you log in through Facebook and you have access. The app can know like who are your friends in order for you to be matched together in the same cities. And one day like I get an email from Facebook saying that we have to limit your access to our API, and that was very problematic because like the value proposition, the whole thing kind of depended on being able to take advantage of that. Don't take advantage of that, or basically use that, because like Facebook is supposed to provide that for developers, right?
Mm-hmm.
For entrepreneurs who want to build on top of that platform. But so in the email they basically said, yeah, don't even reply to this. We're never going to explain why. We're never going to tell you, or you will never be able to basically revoke that, like take back that access, or that's it. Like, and you're basically, this is like you're faced with this thing, and you like at that point you realize, oh God, like we live in this world where these companies have become so big and so powerful that they're essentially monopolies that are like single choke points that keep away anyone who is trying to, like even remotely trying to be somehow in the same field, in the same space. Like it's crazy. Like so they don't want you to compete with them. And at that point, yeah.
Go ahead.
At that point, I was like, oh God, like this is why Bitcoin is cool, because there's decentralization, because there's that one single party who can just tell you, nope, you don't have access to this, nope, you won't be able to build this, and that's when it started to click, really.
Right.
Yeah.
And no, I experienced this when we were at Barstool. Like Facebook cracked down on the media companies on their platform as well, and they did not let like media companies monetize like via videos that would have ads in them like on Facebook's platform. Like they wouldn't let them run. They wanted to suck up all that ad revenue.
Oh yeah, I mean we weren't even monetizing anything. Everything was for free. It was just like an app built by college students that was literally launched like a month ago, and they were already trying to do that.
So what year was this, if you don't mind me
This was like
asking?
2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so you had the oh shit moment. This is why Bitcoin exists. And what happened from there? Did you have Murad give you a bunch of reading materials?
From there, yeah, of course. I came to him and I was like, give me you've already obviously been through this, and like, you know what resources I should use to basically delve deeper into it so that I don't waste my time. Because, you know, like especially back at that time, like it was like at the, like that's when the bull market was like about to start and all that time. It was crazy. There's just so much noise, like, you know, and you don't know who to listen to, who to trust, who to believe. Like right now it's kind of different because like in the bear market, like all these, I say like in the bear market, like charlatans they're on break. Like, you know, there's less and less of them, and there's much more signal, and it's much easier to actually like seek out quality information.
Really?
But back in the day, I think he definitely told me about your podcast, so that's something that I started to listen to like from almost the very beginning.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice. Damn. Well, I appreciate it. I hope I didn't lead you astray at all in the early days of this podcast.
You actually put me right on track.
Oh, thank you. So what?
You led me here today. So wow.
Right?
Destiny.
What in particular? So this is like one of my favorite questions to ask, especially people who come in hot with some good content, like out of nowhere. Like, what in particular helped you the most when you were first starting to learn, and what sort of framework did you finally settle in on? And like, all right, here's how I filter the signal from the noise.
Well, I definitely think that limiting the amount of people that you listen to, that you follow, that you I mean, at first, obviously, it's hard because you first need to kind of like get a sense of who's who and what is what and who has some kind of ulterior motive, who is trying to push some kind of agenda, whereas somebody else might be just there, of course, nobody is purely objective, but has at least maybe some less bias, less subjectivity to what they're saying. And I think that if you follow like everyone on crypto Twitter, then like there's just going to be so much noise. But if you try to limit the number and make sure that the quality of those people, that you can more or less trust their views. Well, of course you can't trust everything they say, but you always have to have your own filter. Mm-hmm. But yeah, you know. Yeah. There are just so many scammers.
Right. And any particular publications or blog posts?
Well, yeah, probably going to be repeating other people, but definitely I think the stance that I kind of approached it with was more of like, because I study economics, so definitely Austrian economics was something that really helped me understand Bitcoin and appreciate it more from early on, because I think that like, yes, Bitcoin is software, yes, Bitcoin is technology, but to really appreciate the huge impact that it will have on the world, you really need to understand the economic side of it, you know? Mm-hmm. Because otherwise, like, you're just going to become like an Ethereum head. Yeah. So with regards to publications, I don't know, like Mises.org, a bunch of different books by George Guido Hulsman. Like, maybe if you noticed if you're wondering what my profile pic on Twitter is, it's the cover of Ethics of Money Production. So that's definitely a great book. Rothbard, What They've Done to Our Money. What else? Bunch of like Nick Szabo, of course. Mm-hmm. His work is very, very influential, and like I think that he's one of those few people. Like, to be able to appreciate Bitcoin, it's like 99% of the, like over 90% of the people are unable to appreciate what Bitcoin is and how impactful it will be, because they specialize in one or two domains or fields or academic disciplines. But in order to be able to really understand Bitcoin, you need to at least have a considerable depth in like a handful, like in a dozen of fields. Yeah. And very few people can do that. I think Nick Szabo is definitely one of those. Mm-hmm. He understands the monetary history, he understands the cryptography, he understands blah 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 blah. Like, you know,
the law, legal repercussions.
Exactly. But if you're just an economist, then you're probably not going to understand the technology. You're probably not going to understand the game theory necessarily, or blah blah blah. And that's like for every single person. You need to get all those people together and have them think like as a super mind to only be able to understand what this is, you know?
Right.
So that's why it's really hard. Like, I think like even if you're a very smart person, that doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to be able to. It's just going to click just like that. You need to always do research, and you always need to delve into other disciplines that you might not have any knowledge in.
That's why I think Twitter is the best resource, because you just have masters of different domains meeting in a central place to be like, all right, I see where you're coming from in your domain. Here's where I'm coming from in my domain, and you sort of piece it all together that way.
Yeah, no, Twitter is just an invaluable resource. It's priceless. I really I'm really glad that I joined
When did
that
you join?
community. When did I what?
When did you join? June 2010.
Oh no, it's just my old account. I was like a teenager when I made it. I actually joined maybe like half a year ago. Like I didn't really want to like make an account before I thought that I had enough. Obviously, you can't know everything about Bitcoin, and everyone is very far from that. But until I had enough understanding of it, at least to some extent, it's obviously very subjective. And only then, like I think it was August 2018 when my first post was made.
What's
So,
life
like,
after Twitter been like? Has it been different?
It's fun. I really like it. I think that like a considerable amount of the information that I learn every day comes from Twitter, and just like there's so much stuff going on, like, you know, and not just about Bitcoin. Like there are other fields that I feel like Bitcoin makes you realize many other things about life that are very, very valuable.
Yeah, I was lucky to find the ability to use Twitter as a tool to follow like FinTwit and financial markets, like when I was working in finance. And like, so I've been following some of these FinTwit accounts for like almost 6-7 years now, and it's just like you can learn about anything in the world, any market, any region, any war, really. That's another interesting thing I use Twitter for, is following like people in war-torn areas while it's going on. Again, we shill Twitter pretty hard here already.
Absolutely. But to be honest, like now that I've been exposed to, now that I'm part of Bitcoin Twitter, crypto Twitter, whatever you call it, like going and really like looking at other types of Twitter, like, I don't know, startup Twitter or like, I don't know, VC Twitter, like it's just so boring. Like nothing is going on there compared to like how much like activity there is in like with regards to Bitcoin.
You don't see as much impassioned debate as there is in crypto Twitter outside of crypto Twitter.
Exactly. And that's a huge sign, I think. Like that's a huge sign, you know?
The one sect of Twitter that might come close is like activist investor Twitter, probably.
Yeah. But still not as much.
Yeah, just shit talking products they don't like. We shit talk shit coins, so sort of similar. So let's dive into it. I mean, you've been studying Bitcoin now for 2 years?
Mm-hmm.
You've written some pieces. Most recently, you wrote Bitcoin's incentive system, or When the Stars Align. Before that, you and Yassine wrote the first part. You only put out part one, right?
Yeah, there's 2 more parts coming out.
Yeah, so part one of the
whether Bitcoin is a winner take all or winner take most.
So setting the stage for that. We'll jump into those, but the topic that you're excited to talk about, and I'm excited to hear you talk about, that we're going to start out with tonight, is Bitcoin as time.
Mm-hmm.
So Bitcoin, at the end of the day, is a time-stamping protocol. One of my favorite ways that Bitcoin has ever been described by Andrew DeSantis is that Bitcoin, let me think of it. Give me a sec. It's coming. Bitcoin, when implemented correctly, is a time-stamping protocol. Bitcoin is a time-stamping and messaging protocol that, if implemented correctly, results in a store value. There we go. That's what it was. But like the time aspect, the time-stamping aspect, I think that's something that you are very excited to talk about.
Yeah, for sure.
Have you written about it yet?
No, I haven't. So this is the first time I'm like coming out with these ideas.
We got some fresh.
I'm sure there are other people who are thinking about this. I don't take full credit for this, like, theory, but it's not a theory. I think it's just something you come to by deduction. And yeah, so basically, like, you can talk about Bitcoin in a lot of different ways, and everyone says like, this is money, Bitcoin is money. No, Bitcoin is not money. Bitcoin is software. Bitcoin is like, yeah, okay, Bitcoin is all those things, but at the most fundamental level, like, you know how we think about Bitcoin as stored energy. Why? Because, and that's absolutely true. And why? Because Bitcoin enables us to extract and monetize sources of energy that are remote, that are trapped in areas for whatever logistical operational reason, and we're unable to make use of them, right? And I don't know, like, just so the listeners know what I'm talking about, they probably already do, but you can basically use that energy instead of trying to get it, I don't know, somewhere from a remote place in Ireland to the market, you would just use that energy to mine bitcoins. And once you have those bitcoins, you can literally just transact with them. You can send them anywhere in the world seamlessly, which is huge for in terms of efficiency. Like so much energy is just there. It just sits there, basically wasted. Nobody takes advantage of it. And like, so yes, this is very important that Bitcoin is stored energy, but more importantly, something more fundamental and more basic. And when I say basic, I don't mean basic in conventional sense. I mean
complexity, from a complexity standpoint.
In terms of like human nature.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is time. And I will explain why that is, and why that is just more important than any other little eureka revelation moment that I had in the last 2 years.
Bitcoin is time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you know how people always say that Bitcoin is, as opposed to other forms of money, as opposed to other things, it's very scarce. Its stock to flow ratio is very high. It's like it's going to be more scarce than gold soon, and basically nobody can increase its supply at their will and wherever they want, as opposed to many other things that's like basically the supply of Bitcoin is inelastic to changes in demand, which is very important. But you have to understand that there's something that is more fundamentally scarce, more limited in its nature than Bitcoin, than gold, than anything for that matter, than real estate on Manhattan, than anything. And that is the human time that every single one of us is allotted on this earth. And if you just think about that, there's nothing else. Time. That's it. That's all you have. You have your, what's the average life expectancy nowadays? Like 70 years, depending on where you are, I guess. But yeah, nobody really lives more than 100 years, right?
We're getting cosmic so early into this. I love
yeah,
it.
but that's important.
Time.
To get cosmic, right?
Right? No, that's why I've been saying a lot on this podcast recently. You only have one life, freaks. Enjoy it.
So yeah, you actually better enjoy it and make most of it. Enjoy it. Don't waste it on things like that you don't necessarily make you happy. So we have those 70, 80 years or whatever, and even if you have a lot of resources, like what are you going to do? You can maybe lead a healthier lifestyle, or have the best doctors, best medicine. So maybe that's going to increase your life by like maybe 10 years, 15 years, who knows? But we need to think of the idea that like even some of the richest people in the world, some of the most influential people, like billionaires, they die in their 50s, sometimes in their 60s, because of like, God forbid, for cancer or any other debilitating disease, and they can't do anything about that. They, like, you would think that they have like billions of dollars, they have so much power, but they can't. Like, don't you think that
everybody's on a level playing field when it comes to time?
Exactly. Steve Jobs, he died, I think, of pancreatic cancer at 56. Like, you would think like he is literally one of the most important people of our time, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't. And there you have someone else who didn't do anything, and he lives, or she lives for 90 years or whatever. But that's not the point. Is that nobody controls that. We can't control that, and our time is absolutely limited. Whatever it is, 56, 70. Or whatever.
The Grim Reaper can come whenever.
Exactly. And I think that it's very important to know that, like, once again, like those billionaires, they would probably, don't you think that they would have given up like a big percent of their wealth, billions of dollars, just to live another decade? Just maybe live another year, for all that matter, for all I know, like, you know? Like, because if you have billions, if you have so much power and wealth, like, what good is it if you're not there to enjoy the fruits of your labor? If you are not there, like, I'd rather be very poor and alive than the richest person in the world and dead. Like, you know?
Right.
Exactly. So you have to understand that your time is the most scarce, the most important, the most fundamentally limited thing in nature, and there's nothing can compete with that. And this leads me to my next thought. So the fact that most of us, say, live 70 years, as I always said, we work anywhere from like 30 to 35 or maybe 40 years of our waking life, you know? So considerable amount of time of our life is spent working in a factory, in an office, wherever, whatever you do. And why is that? Because we need money, right? And we need money to get by, and if we stop working, then we'll probably not be able to maintain the same living standard, or just not be able to have a roof over our head, or be able to buy the food that we need to eat. So basically, when you work, you are engaging in a voluntary exchange, and you are giving away. You're giving away your energy, but more importantly, you're giving away your time.
Yes.
You're giving away your time in exchange for money. Let's say dollars, for example. You get a wage in dollars. But wait a moment. We just came to the conclusion that time is the most scarce, the most fundamentally limited in its supply thing in the universe that you can possibly have. Whereas money, as we know money in the world today, let's say dollars, they are very,
Infinite.
very different. They're very much expandable in their nature.
I see where you're
their
going
supply
with
is
this.
not limited. So, like, this realization is just mind-bending. Like, this means that you're giving away something that cannot possibly be created, aka your time, for something else, for money, dollars, that are constantly increasing in their supply and thereby losing their value. Like, this is a terribly unfair exchange, if you come to think of it.
Right?
Yeah.
Like you're trying the work and the wage that you make for the work that you expend is supposed to represent value that should be stored throughout time.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. And you have to realize that the yearly inflation rate in the United States is what, like 5%? I mean, they say that it's like 2, 3, but we know that it's much more than that. But for the sake of the argument, let's say it's 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this means that your wealth that you hold in dollars, because most likely your wage is paid in dollars, loses 5% of its value every year, because your share of that money supply becomes smaller relative to the total share that just has expanded by 5%. And at first it seems that 5%, right? Not that much, right? 5%, what was 5%? But wait, it is more important to think about it. Think about the effect that the effect is amplified over time. And if you basically compound those 5%, you realize that it only takes around 15 years for your dollars to lose 50% of their value, of their original value. And that means that if you work really hard, you save up a considerable amount of money. Let's say you work for years and you saved $100,000, and you're planning to use this money in the future. You're planning to, I don't know, buy your child or like pay for your child's tuition, buy a house for your family. But the thing is that this means that in just 15 years time, that $100 that you worked so hard for, $100,000, will only buy you stuff worth of $50,000. It's going to lose half of what it's worth.
Purchasing power.
Exactly. And so this means that it is essentially impossible to save these dollars that you earn and hope that you will be able to buy the same stuff in the future.
What do you have to say to the Keynesians who would say, who are savers to reap the benefits of value stored through time? Like, inflation's necessary to get people stoking the economy.
I don't think that deflation is bad. I don't think that. I think we need to really think about the idea that somehow, through time, somebody was able to create this implicit negative connotation associated with money and saving money and hoarding. He's a hoarder. Wow, what a terrible person. He hoards money. Wait a second. What does it mean? Like, before we get into attacking that person and lynching a person who just decides to save money, what does it mean? Saving money means that you are basically providing value for society, and that value is represented in money. I'm sorry, but money is not bad. Money is actually good. It's like, if you create value for society, if you help others, then they're willing to give you something in return, and that is money. And if you want to be able to have some certitude in the future, to be able to hedge for the risks of life, and life is very risky, you want to be able to pay for your children's school education, for some maybe God forbid some emergency medical expenses that anyone can have. You want to be able to save money into the future, and that's fine. You don't want to be consuming random, nonsensical, useless products every single day that we are forced to do in the current environment, because we know that if you don't spend today, then tomorrow I'm not going to be able to buy what I can buy today. So I'm forced to. Like, the most optimal thing is to buy today because tomorrow, or go into debt today, get a mortgage today, because tomorrow is going to not be able. I'm not going to be able to do that. So I don't think it's fair.
Right.
But, yeah.
And this reminds me of my conversation from like a year and a half ago now with Santiago Siri when he was on this podcast. But when he explained like experiencing hyperinflation in Argentina in particular, like particularly his like memories of his mother or father getting paid and then running to the grocery store and buying food as quickly as possible before the exchange rate changed. Like, that is just, I would argue, this sort of scenario played out to like a much more extreme, not even much more extreme. Obviously, it's more extreme at that point in time, but like we are somewhere along the timeline of ending up running to the grocery store to buy groceries as fast as we possibly can after getting paid. Right now, it's forcing people to conspicuously spend on like a quarterly, monthly, weekly basis, but maybe we're eking closer and closer towards like a daily, hourly, minute by minute basis, like Venezuela and Argentina are experiencing.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think what's also important to understand is that, so what the Keynesians and what the status quo economists are probably advocating for is like, we need inflation because inflation is necessary to stimulate the demand, and if there's no inflation, then people are not going to be demanding the products that our companies and our society builds, and blah blah blah. But you need to understand that, like, how the process of civilization advancement comes about, and it comes about in the following manner: people are able to create value for the society, and they are rewarded with, let's say, money, with something that stores their wealth, and they're able to collect that. And by collecting, they are they're able to save that money in order to have some time to think about the potentially long-term viable investments that they can make with this money that they now have. But so let's say I earn some money and I have like a year to think about what startup I should build, or what business I should invest in, or what stock I should buy. But if I earn money and I know that it's going to be worthless, or is not going to have the same, I'm going to be pushed to spend it, and I don't have enough time to think about a good investment. I'm probably just going to buy something that I don't even need, and definitely not something that's going to increase the economy or the GDP or create jobs. So like if you give people time, they're definitely going to be making better decisions. Like, everyone needs time, you know?
Mm-hmm. And so how do we get to the point of Bitcoin sort of representing time, storing your value via Bitcoin and having that represent your hard work throughout time, to just getting to pure Bitcoin is time?
Yeah, so like I'm nowhere from being done with this idea. So let me continue. We kind of went on a tangent here. So basically, we live in a world where it's impossible to earn dollars and hope that you'll be able to have them the same buying power in the future. And this leads people who you would think that have nothing to do with these domains, they have to be part of them. Like, people in this world, you see like a lot of like dentists or florists who are kind of forced to talk about the stock market, or who are forced to think of making an investment in real estate.
Chase for yield, man.
Exactly. Like, they aren't supposed to be doing that. You know, like a florist or a dentist, they specialize in something. They have mastered a skill, and they continue to master it every single day, and they shouldn't be in need of trying to find the best performing stock to make sure that their money doesn't, like, so that they can keep the same wealth that they earn today, you know?
Right.
Like, they don't have the time to watch Bloomberg. They don't have the time to read financial newsletters.
And if you are watching Bloomberg or CNBC, you're getting info from like Kramer, like the fast money guys who are fucking basically throwing darts at the fucking wall.
Yeah, of course. And Oh, and probably they're also not an accredited investor in the first place, so they
Right?
don't have access to like how most of the investments that are available. And another thing is that like, so people, my point is that people, a lot of like people in this world who understand that money, like if you hold your dollars cash, it's not going to preserve your wealth into the future. They buy stocks, equity, or real estate because that tends to perform better. It tends to preserve its value better into the future. But the thing is that these people who suffer the most are those who are paid in dollars in cash, and they don't have the access, they don't have the information, they don't have the time.
And most importantly, they don't have the time. I think.
Exactly.
'Cause, like, you're working a
they
grueling
work
job.
all day. Like,
Yeah.
unfortunately, people who are not as financially privileged as others, they tend to work longer hours. They tend to have less time to spend with their family, to spend on some other hobbies, or to sit on the internet, learn about how the financial trends work. And more importantly, they don't even have the amount of money that you need in order to invest into real estate.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. Like they can't afford an apartment in Vancouver or Manhattan. Like what? They can't buy like a portion of it. And these people are the ones who are just forced to have cash, and they're the ones losing out the most.
Right.
And that's crazy. Exactly. So it's very important to understand that this exchange that we're engaged in everyday life of me working long hours, giving away my strictly limited, scarce resource, absolutely limited time, in exchange for something that is the opposite. That's something that expands all the time, money, like dollars, for example. And yeah.
Can we go off on a little tangent?
Sure, yeah.
I was gonna say, but like, when you explain it this clearly, it makes it like hard to believe that there's not some like conspiracy to keep the average man down, like via these monetary policies. Like, am I getting too Alex Jones here?
Call it whatever you want. Like, I mean, conspiracy. The word conspiracy has like this, like, oh, conspiracy. No, it must not be true. But like, I think humans are made. Humans are not good or bad. Humans are just humans, and people seek out the best opportunities for themselves. And I think that like it just so happened that in the world that we are in today, the tables turned in a way. The emergent properties have played out in a way that this is the case, and it benefits certain people at the expense of others. And until Bitcoin came about, I don't think it was possible to somehow change that status quo.
So you too believe that Bitcoin is the sly roundabout way to take currency out of the hands of the government?
Yeah.
All right, tangent over.
Yeah. So basically, the idea is that because we don't have sound money, we are forced to work most of our life. Most of our life, we're forced to work instead of doing the things that we actually enjoy. Because frankly, most people probably don't really enjoy their work. I mean, I hope they do, but I don't think that every single person in the office particularly enjoys their time. And
that's pretty terrible.
And the office, like, that's actually a pretty good outcome. A lot of people don't have this. It's a very privileged outcome. The only thing that you have is your time on this planet. And nothing matters more than your time because, as we already established, that is the most scarce thing. And now that we've realized that this exchange is fundamentally unfair, so this obligatory pursuit of money that we are forced to as human beings is basically the deal with the devil. There is no way to win. Working for your wage, for your dollars, means you are the donkey chasing the carrot. Right? It's a rat race. I'm not saying that nobody should work. I'm just like, some people, they have no other choice. And yes, but that's the system that we live in, and that's what we're supposed to be thinking about.
Demand better money where you can store your work.
Exactly. So once again, I'm just going to reiterate this because like I just think it's so important. You're exchanging your strictly limited time on this earth for an infinitely expandable dollar or any money. So like this is a huge scam, essentially. If you think about it. Like,
Misir, we throw scam around a lot in this industry. Is this a true scam, or are you You just trying to pump Bitcoin here.
We haven't even gotten to Bitcoin. What are you talking about? Bitcoin is coming. I haven't even said anything about Bitcoin yet.
But it is really a scam, and people, and we're gonna get into this later, but like people don't understand money, and again, I like talked about this in the Bent this week, like when Arbed Out highlighted the history of Iran in 1296, like the Iranian merchant class, like destroyed the financial czar when he tried to introduce paper money to their silver dinar system. So like, and then another example, which is slipping my mind right now. I believe it was one of the founding fathers. I forget exactly. It might be Thomas Jefferson. Butchering this quote right now, but or no, it was one of the bankers. Like, I care not who makes the laws if I can control the money press. That's all that matters. Like, there's themes throughout history that like say like, hey, whoever controls the money is like it's an important aspect of our lives, and it should be taken seriously and to not let it become bastardized. And it's been a big theme recently. Like, we just don't understand that we're thrown into the system where like money isn't fair. Like the financial czar in Iran has succeeded, and people don't even realize that it's bad. Yeah, it's a scam.
It's crazy. I mean, like the Fed, the U.S. Like, I mean, the dollar is the one who really controls the world at this point. But I don't think that it's impossible to change that because we now have Bitcoin. But essentially, so my point is that this is a vampiric force, and it is a vampiric force because it is literally sucking life out of you. It is draining you hour by hour, year by year. It is stealing your time.
This is poetic, Misir.
I didn't try to make it
It's vampiric. It is. It's sucking your time.
Mm-hmm. It's like a vampire.
Your valuable time and depreciating, or inflating the shit out of the money supply that you're supposed to store that time in.
Yeah. Like, realizing that I think is very important. And finally, enough of the negative, enough of the grim and the gloomy, the vampires. We come to something that has the potential to change that to a large extent, because Bitcoin, with its strictly limited supply, its at first disinflationary and eventually deflationary nature, allows you to have a very, very much fairer trade, because you are now exchanging your strictly limited time for a similarly strictly limited units of value. Just think about that.
Mm-hmm.
This is much more fair, because now that means that you are giving away something that is limited for something else that is also limited. It's very different. So, you know the meme, joke, woke. So I say, joke, time is money. Woke, money is time.
Right?
Yeah.
Damn, you just flipped it on the head.
So, Bitcoin is essentially the first money that allows you to trade your truly valuable, truly scarce, strictly limited human time for something that is similarly limited in its supply, which changes everything. And I'll say why. Like, if you think about it this way, like, you could calculate the amount of extra time that an average human spends working because of the fact that their money doesn't, like their dollars, for example, they don't hold their value.
Please tell me you crunched the numbers.
I didn't necessarily crunch any numbers, but like, I mean, somebody should probably do that much more accurately than me, but this is very approximate and rough. But like, without Bitcoin, without sound money, people have to work multiple number of times more during their life, as opposed to the amount of time that they would have otherwise worked if they had sound money like Bitcoin.
Maybe this is the way we start framing Bitcoin. It's like, we all know you hate work. We all know everybody hates fucking work. We all know you want to work less. Sound money, a Bitcoin standard, would make this possible because you could save your wealth throughout time.
I know, right?
Hey, everybody working on the narratives out there that's listening to this, write this down. This is we're bringing this up at the next Bitcoin meeting. Yeah,
for sure. So once again, this is very rough and approximate, but say we work 30, 40 years of our life. That means that the dollar that you make lose, like, you know how we said the dollar that you make loses 50% of its value over maybe approximately 15 years. So during those 30, 40 years, your basically dollar loses that 50% like more than twice.
Yes.
Which means that, like, once again, this is very rough. Don't quote me on anything. But, like, this makes an average person work, like, anywhere from 2 to 3 times more than they would have otherwise could if they wanted to have the same amount of purchasing, if the same amount of wealth in their life. And that's crazy. Like, if you think about it, people with in the sound money world, people could retire in their 40s, like, easily. And they wouldn't have to, but they could. Whereas right now, they are forced to work, like, until their 50s, and it's still unable to pay a lot of their debt.
Let's extrapolate even further. Like, how does this change, like, human nature, and what does the world look like if people are able to do this? And the rat race sort of gets...
The world looks very, very much different. Why? Because now that every single person has so much more time on their hands, and instead of every mother, every father going out and working from 8 to 5, or, I mean, maybe sometimes later, they can now spend that time with their family. They can now spend that time doing the things that they enjoy. They can now have that time to actually think of their, I don't know, some side projects. And as we know, side projects always result in some very, very impactful products. I don't know, like, you know how in Google they had a 25% of the time, or like 1 day a week, do whatever you want, and like a lot of innovation came out from there. And like people, if you give them the time and the ability to just do what they like, they become creative. They do what they, and like it's crazy. Like, I mean, you could think about it as like the social effect of, forget about the economics of it. Like the social effect that this has is also very destructive, I think. Like if you spend most of the time of your day working, like what are you going to become? Like you're going to hate the world, you're going to hate yourself because you don't have anything. You just have to
become fat, bald, out of
work,
shape.
You had dinner, you really want to sleep, and you have to wake up to do that once again and all over again. Like, you know?
It's no way to live. I like physically, like that's one of the reasons I had to quit finance. Like I physically had like a physical aversion to sitting in the cube all day. Like I could feel myself getting fat, out of shape. Like
that's not normal. There's something.
I just felt like I felt like a rat in a cage.
Yeah, that's not. I don't think that's the optimal way that a human being should just exist. Like, you know, this is once again, some might say this is very privileged of you to say that, but like in theory, I think sound money allows us to change that to considerable extent and have people enjoy similar living standards while working less hours.
How many people do you think enjoy their lives? This is a heavy question.
Enjoy their lives?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people enjoy aspects of their lives and they don't necessarily, and maybe they hate the other aspects of their life.
That's a good way to put it.
So I don't think it's just, yeah, I don't. They may hate their work, or
maybe that's a better
they're
question.
willing
how many
to
people, a percentage of everybody that's working, how many do you think hate their job?
A large percent.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I mean, the dream is to enjoy your work, but like that's such an idealistic thing.
Right.
What do you need to do? Like, I don't know.
Is it idealistic only in this system, or do you think there is a way in which people could
I think it's definitely more idealistic, a lot more idealistic in this system, because here you are forced to chase that carrot. Here you are forced to be that donkey, and you are essentially, you have less choice, and you just have to do what brings you money, because you need to work constantly to make sure that you can have some wealth, have some purchasing power, because otherwise it's just going to
starve.
It's fleeting, you know. But in a world where where money's sound, that means that you can work as a florist, and if you actually enjoy that, you can just do that, and you know that if you earned $100,000 over the last couple of years, you will have that same amount of money. You can literally just stop working. You can take a sabbatical, not work for a couple of years, and then come back and know that, oh, at least I have this because I've earned it in the past. I don't have to constantly be worried about the future.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what, like... So if, like, there is a trend... Like, obviously there's going to be... If Bitcoin comes to fruition in the way in which we think it will, in the most optimistic way in which we can envision... The people that go along for the ride of this monetization event, like, that's going to be a unique sect of a couple generations of people that participated in this sort of new asset monetizing and accruing value. Like, is there like a period? I guess is there like a period where like the people that rode that wave have like a different life than the people that come after them, or like do you sort of take everybody to a new level, like rising tide raises all boats, and like you sort of plateau up there?
I think it does raise all the boats. Well, obviously the people who have invested in Bitcoin in 2011 are clearly going to make more money than those who. Like, we need to understand that even if you, like, I believe that even if you don't necessarily profit directly from holding Bitcoin while this monetization process occurs and while the Bitcoin's price increases, you are still going to be better off, because in a world of sound money, in a world where people are using Bitcoin, that means that you're most likely going to be paid in Bitcoin. That means that your labor is now able to preserve itself and preserve its fruits into the future. So even if you're not somebody who bought, I don't know, 1,000 Bitcoins in 2010 for the penny on the dollar, your life will still be better, because now you don't have to constantly chase something. Now you can work for 15 years, 20 years of your life and then never work again, because at least you have that, you made that value, you created that value, you were rewarded for that value, and now you can plan into the future, and you can be like, okay, if I spend, let's say, I don't know, $2,000 every month, then I will be able to not have to work for this amount of time, and I'll be able to live a comfortable life because I've already worked for the last 20 years. But right now, you can't really do that, because you don't know like how this money supply, how the Fed is going, what their monetary policy is going to be next year, and how is that going to impact your life.
Right?
Yeah.
And so Bitcoin as time is the perfect asset to store your time. It's fascinating. I've never heard the thought experiment explained that way. Are we done with the thought experiment yet?
Almost.
All right, we're still going. Let's keep going.
So you remember how I just said that, like, a world where we have something like Bitcoin, hopefully Bitcoin, sound money essentially. That means that people will be able to, if they were to lead the same lifestyle, have the same standard of living, have the same wealth as they do in this world, they could technically work 2, maybe to 3 times less. Like, I mean, this is very rough, but definitely less than they do have to now. That's the most important thing, and considerably less. So you understand that this creates an incredible amount of efficiency. This technology is enabling so much efficiency. And like, if people have to work 2 or 3 times less, that means that they have to drive their car to work 2 or 3 times less. They have to buy, 2 or 3 times less of useless stuff that they need to work, and all
Khakis
these
and button-down shirts. And
exactly,
stuff like that.
and then people talk about how Bitcoin is using so much energy and is destroying the world. Like, they are thinking so
small, dude.
Small, yeah. It's so narrow-minded to just like, oh no, Bitcoin is using 0.1% of the world's energy or whatever. I don't know how much it is, but like, no. But you can't just look at what's like on the surface. You have to understand what is the underlying meaning and what impact is going to have, and the impact is huge. So if like people are going to be wasting 2 or 3 times less effort, like less personal energy, and only working, let's say, 2 times less, like the efficiency that is enabled by that, and it's only worth what, $70 billion? That's laughable. Right? Can you imagine, like, something that can make the world more efficient by number of times, like by, I don't know how many, but
magnitude.
By orders of magnitude.
So like, you haven't even. I don't know if you're gonna get to it. Maybe I'm finishing the thought experiment here, but like the amount of human ingenuity that'll be.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about just like the amount of wasted time.
Yes,
but the amount it's not just a negative. Exactly. It's also positive because it gives you so much time to do what actually is important to you, important to the world. Yeah, exactly. All the inventions, all the technology that is enabled by that. I haven't even gotten to that. So maybe that 2x is amplified by like a magnitude.
Exactly.
But given all that, like that technology that can make everything so much more efficient, something that will allow every person to work several times less and earn the same amount of wealth in their life, is only worth $70 billion. Like, very few people.
How early are we, dude?
Like, very few people understand this, and like understanding this opens your eyes to why Bitcoin's market capitalization will be like in today's equivalent will be in the hundreds of trillions of dollars. I think
hundreds of trillions.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about the monetization path. Like, what's it look like?
Well, it looks like that it first has to be a store of value. Like, I mean, I'm not going to say anything different from what most people say because I agree with that. Like, something becomes first, it becomes a store.
I'm not talking about like re-explain the continuum that goes through.
SOV, MOV.
I'm talking about more like, what do you think like macro-wise drives this? Do you think it's sort of understanding of the technology and conscious choice of people just choosing it over the US dollar, or is it people forced into a corner to use it?
It's something that I thought about a lot, and something that some time ago I was like, I always thought that it's so important to create this educational content to teach people about what Bitcoin is and what money is, and I still think that that's very important. And like what you are doing, what like even I'm doing to a very small extent because I'm just writing articles and being on Twitter. I guess also helps someone sometimes to understand, like they'll be able to appreciate Bitcoin. But the thing is that I don't think that even in the world where everyone uses Bitcoin or hyper Bitcoinized world, I still think that a lot of the people, if not, I don't know how many, but a lot of people will still not understand what the hell this is, what money is, why it is better than, and they do. And the funny thing is that they don't need to. They don't need to. Like, Beauty On always talks about how, like,
shout out Beauty On. Shout out Keen.
Yeah, shout out to Bitcoin Matters. It's a very cool podcast.
Him and Clark,
Shane Kennedy. Beauty On, yeah. He always says that like people use WhatsApp and they enjoy the fact that they can rely on its encryption, but they don't even know what encryption really is or how it works, or they don't know any of that. They don't need to. It just works, and that's why everyone uses it. And the same thing, like, I thought that, like, oh God, how is every single person going to understand, like, all this Austrian economics, all this game theoretical theories, game theory, and everything that comes with that. Like it took me, like, I don't know, like, reading 10 books, watching so many videos, listening to so many podcasts to just, like, be able to come close somewhere to, like, be able to understand it. Like, nobody has the time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that, man. Like,
nobody got time for that.
Who has the time to do that?
Right. That's why I'm so happy I found Bitcoin in college when I had so much fucking time.
Exactly. Yeah. Likewise. People can barely like have and we also have to think about the attention spans nowadays. Like, you know how back in the day everyone was watching, when people were watching movies, like people in the theater. Like, I don't know, thespians probably most likely thought of movies.
Haven't heard thespians dropped in a while. I love it.
Such a low-level form of entertainment. It's like, you know, so high time preference, you know? Like, movie, just sit down, watch a movie, eat popcorn. And now, even movies, like now, I think movies are becoming what, like, for example, theater was back in the day, because now we have Netflix, which like 20-minute shows. We have short YouTube videos. We have Vines, God forbid. We have, I don't know, Snapchat. And everything is so quick. Everything is instant. Everything is like consume. Swipe left, swipe right. Like, dislike. All that type of stuff.
Frame switch.
Exactly. It's crazy. Yeah. It's just absolutely crazy. Like, the amount of information. And people are now, they're not willing to, like, last time, like, people don't watch, like, very few. I really like movies. And I'm really into, like, film. But most of the time when I try to maybe hold a conversation about, I don't know, who's your favorite director, what movies you like, nobody's like, oh, I don't have any favorite director. I don't watch movies. I watch Netflix.
Right.
I watch Netflix, yeah. Because it's easy to watch 20-minute episodes and, you know, binge watch them instead of, like, having to sit for 2 hours, think about something, like, you know?
Well, and let's talk about the state of movies, though. Movies suck today.
Yeah.
There's no good, like, I would argue, like, after Christopher Nolan's Batman series, like, that's not like the last good movie series. There's been other good movies, but like it's shit. It's just a bunch of remakes, like a bunch of redos. Like, and I like to get like I love movies too. Like I love Stanley Kubrick. I love his films.
Yeah.
Watched Eyes Wide Shut. recently.
Yeah, man,
That's a crazy one.
That's a crazy movie. I have very mixed feelings about that movie.
Yeah, it's
I don't know.
crazy
It's like
movie.
very interesting, but at the same time quite disturbing.
Is it real? Is that shit happening?
I don't know. I went recently to
to one of those parties.
No, it was an interactive, immersive show experience. There's like a in Manhattan. There's like this like 5-story hotel, and you basically go in there. Everyone has to like all the audience members have to wear a mask.
What?
And they walk around this like very dark, very gloomy, like post-apocalyptic hotel. Like it's like set in after World War II or something, or during the World War II. And you walk around, and then there's people who are interacting with you, who are actors, and they're basically performing. And like I don't know, like, it's crazy. They're walking around naked. Like it's
what?
I mean, it's almost like you're in that movie.
What's going on at Columbia? Is this a Columbia or NYU?
No, this has nothing to do with Columbia. This is
Damn. I don't know if I want to go to this, but I am a little bit intrigued. What the hell is going on
it's
here?
based on Shakespeare, actually, like Macbeth or something.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
But anyways, we were talking about people like consuming information. They don't have the like. And I'm not even talking about reading books. I'm talking about movies. Watching a movie is much easier than reading a book.
Right.
And
reading books, so boring.
Yeah, there are no TV shows yet that you can watch to really understand the value proposition of Bitcoin. Unfortunately,
right.
I'm sorry. Let alone Vines.
Right. That's something I've been thinking about though. Still like many video series stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's definitely something that is a good medium that will enable a lot of people to really appreciate it. So my point being is that people don't have the time to really understand and the value proposition of Bitcoin, but they don't necessarily need to. Most people don't need to understand it because the economic reality imposes itself onto the world, onto the people.
Excuse me.
Itself.
Yeah. So I bring up your pin tweet here. Mass adoption of Bitcoin is inevitable.
Yeah.
So why isn't it? I think that's what you're getting at. Is it's inevitable. It doesn't matter if people understand it. So let's get into why you think Bitcoin adoption is inevitable.
Why? Simply because it is sounder than other forms of money. And when something is more sound, and not only sound, like I mean, yes, it's sound, but it's also constantly appreciating in value. Like if we look at its price, if we look at the lowest price of Bitcoin every single year in the last 10 years, it has been increasing at a very, very good rate.
I think only 1 year it went down or decreased.
Yeah, I think so. Like in
it had a lower low.
15. All right, I remember. Yeah, but I think it won. Yeah. But still, 9 out of 10 years, it's been doing what it's supposed to be doing. And like, it's so early that it's going to be doing that for quite some time until we hit a plateau, which is not coming anytime soon, probably. Maybe in like 100 years. But the point being is that people, even the detractors of something like Bitcoin, they are incentivized to be part of it. Like, because, you know, like even if you don't like it, you might as well profit from it. Like everyone is.
It's actually
like something I wrote. I think it was in the last article. Like
I think there's some people that know me that hold Bitcoin just as a hedge in case I'm right. You know.
Exactly. Yeah. Because like if Marty, my annoying friend Marty, who's been on about Bitcoin, if he's going to be right, he's going to be so much richer and so much more powerful than me, and I will be going to be the idiot. Might as well at least make fun of him, but not end up in a worse position than he is, because at least like I hedge my risks. You know.
Exactly. No, and it's getting to the point where somebody put out a thread saying like if you're a millionaire, like it's becoming riskier not to own a little bit Bitcoin than it is to own Bitcoin, especially if you're in that sort of net worth area.
Definitely, yeah. And I think that what's very important to understand is that every single entity, group, or collective is made up of self-motivated individuals. Like we usually think of like, the Fed, or I don't know, the American government, the round table of some Masons. Like that's not how it works. And like even if it were to work like that, which I don't think it is exactly like that, even if it were, these are hypothetically these 10 people at that round table, they're all humans. They are not a collective hive mind super brain that think in unison and try to take over the world and dominate. They all have children. They all have families. They all have personal priorities. They're all constantly thinking adversarially, like any other human being. Like, so one of these 10 people is probably thinking, oh, this other person who is also very powerful and who's my probably frenemy, as always. What do I do? Maybe I should get into this Bitcoin. Maybe I should get some of this Bitcoin so that in the next 10 years I'm going to, I don't know, so that I'll become even more powerful than he is. Like, nobody can think. This is what like Austrian economics teaches you, you know, and like
Right.
that you have to get down to in the individual level. And on an individual level, there's no we, there's no us, there's no entities, groups, or collectives. There's just you, and you are
Survival.
survival, making your own decisions, optimizing for yourself, basically, you know?
No, and this is, and a lot of people would try to imbue like the selfish sort of tag on people that think that way. Like, it's important to think about yourself as an individual first and then work outwards. But I truly believe like that is important to understand and sort of strive for, because especially if we believe that Bitcoin is a grassroots movement, if it is truly grassroots movement should start with the individual. Like,
Yeah.
conquer your own domain and then move out from there and get your house in order, and then
I mean, this is human nature.
then start
Everyone
cooperating with
prioritizes
others.
themselves over anything else. And I'm not saying that this is good or bad. This is just who we are.
As animals, is
If
what
you
we
can't
have
help
to
yourself,
do.
how are you going to help someone else?
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And I've been thinking recently, like, the more you realize that we live in a world that is guided by the principles of survival of the fittest, the more you actually want to help other people.
Right.
You know, like people say, like people don't want to. They kind of like dismiss this. They negate this idea. No, this is not a world of natural selection. This is not that we are all together in this happy-go-lucky world where we help each other, where we are all. No, but like at the end of the day, you know, like you have to be strong. You have to be able to do your best. Unfortunately, like, but if you know that is the case, you know that some other people who are truly at a disadvantage, who are truly in a position of need, they can't help themselves. That's why you want to help them. So I'm not trying to virtue signal, but
No, you're not, and that's it goes back.
Nobody's going to help them. Like
One of my favorite.
you have to help them.
One of my favorite puns on this podcast that's been brought over from the lacrosse world is like, you're only as strong as the weakest link. So even if you're thinking of like a global hive mind and you are afforded some comfort and wealth as a part of the hive mind, like you would like the world to sort of, again, like rising tide raise all boats. You like to bring those people up to your level and make like the chain as strong as possible. And you do that by sharpening the weakest links or making them stronger.
Yeah, because like if you don't subscribe to like this idea of like I don't know, evolutionary type of survival of the fittest, then you think that like no, it's not the survival of the fittest. That's why the people who are weak, the ones who are actually at a disadvantage, something is going to work out for them. But no, you need to help them. You know, like if you are fitter than them, they are. If you are fitter is a metaphor, obviously. It's not about being fit.
Well, like if you want to get back to like a hunter and gatherer, like it was.
Well, yeah. Well, back then
fit.
it was fit. Now it's probably more like being intelligent or whatever, or maybe being more adaptive. Because I think that's very important.
Very
like adaptation, you know.
Yeah,
it's all about adaptation.
Especially in a world that's changing as
Exactly
drastically as it
like,
is today.
If you can't adapt to, you are just going to become, I don't know, an archetype that is no longer relevant.
My mom's always calling me during these recordings. Mother, I'll get back to you later.
Yeah. So, to my previous point is that like every single group, every single institution, the Fed, whatever, it's made up of self-motivated individuals who are, even if let's say, I don't know, the Fed is going to stands to lose from the adoption of Bitcoin, for example, the people that it is made up of, the individuals, they have the potential to massively gain from the adoption of Bitcoin. You understand?
Shout out to the fifth pillar. Let's make it happen.
Yeah. So you have to understand that it's all about the incentives. And this is what I wrote about in my
most recent piece
called Bitcoin Incentive System, or When the Stars Align. And
by the way, before you get into this, I must note for you freaks out there, obviously can't see this audio recording. The Mahmudov brothers are big note takers, but I will say Misir is a lot more neat and tidy with his notes. Has them with nice clips, organized very well, color coded. Not quite color coded, but very organized. I love it.
I don't know if it's a good thing. I just don't want to. I just have a lot to say, and I don't want to forget anything. That's
no, it's like people who bring notes on this show. The conversations tend to be a little bit more heady, which I like. So let's.
Well, I hope this one ends up being one.
I think people are gonna like your thoughts on Bitcoin in time. So let's talk about Bitcoin's incentives.
Yeah. So, somebody's calling me now. Turn that off. I think that what makes Bitcoin so powerful is the alignment of incentives, the structure, the way like Satoshi designed it. He must have known quite a bit about human nature and the way we interact with each other to create all of these different ways to incentivize people within the Bitcoin community and outside the Bitcoin community to propagate and to basically enable its inevitable success, which I believe is so. And like I think apart from being a technological breakthrough, like maybe even more importantly, I mean they all complement each other, of course, but more fundamentally, it is a psychological and a social phenomenon. Because I really like to think about like Bitcoin is able to leverage human greed. Like, you know, we're all in this for technology. We're all in this to make the world a better place. Yes, sure. Those are the outcomes that are going to result. Those are the consequences.
Stack some sats though, baby.
Exactly. Like, you know, this is in the human nature. Like if it was just for the technology, then I don't think that there would be so many people and so many eyes drawn to it. I think that, and there's nothing bad about, like once again, like money is not bad. Like people wanting to put themselves in a better financial position is normal, and it's actually should be, they should definitely not be like ostracized or like pointed fingers at. They should be, these are good people who are trying to create value for others, because this is what money is, creating value. And once again, it's all about human greed, because humans are greedy, and it's not all about it, but it's definitely a huge lever that in that incentive system.
Is that a good thing though? Is greed good?
It's not good or bad, it's just human. That's something I say all the time. Like, stop trying to categorize things into like black or white. Nothing is like that, you know?
Right.
Yeah. It's, humans are not, some humans are good sometimes, they're bad other times. And plus, what the hell is good or bad? That's also subjective. And I'm going to talk about that later on, because it's also very important.
Oh, freaks. This might be a 3-hour ripper. We've got
really? How long is this?
I mean, we've only checked off 1.5 of I think the six box list right now.
Well, how long have we been on this?
We're an hour and 15 in almost. Hour 10.
Well, let's not tire out our audience that much and try to.
I think they'll listen to it no matter what.
Thank you. You're too kind, Marty. So, coming back to greed. So, what Bitcoin does, it takes human greed and it turns it on its head. So, yes, greed makes people do things that can be seen as evil, but Bitcoin makes sure it takes advantage of that greed and ensures the integrity of the system. So this is like, that is just so incredibly new that they're able to.
If you're going to spin zone greed, it's like, all right, let's spin it into creating the securest monetary system the world has ever seen.
Exactly. And I'm not going to get into all the incentives about, like, I don't know, the hodlers and the miners and all that stuff. We all know about that. But I think what's even more important is, oh, by the way, you should definitely check out another article by Hugo Nguyen. It's called Bitcoin's Incentive Scheme and the Rational Individual.
Yeah, Hugo, at Hugo Hanoi.
Yeah.
On
he's
Twitter.
He's a great guy. He has a great content.
HugoHanoi. Right?
Yep.
And
yeah,
I can't think right now.
So, anyways, I'm not going to get into all the technical and all the incentives within the system because we all talked about them a lot. But I think what's also more important to think about is the incentives outside of the Bitcoin community that propel Bitcoin further. So given the fact that Bitcoin is a neutral money, meaning that it's not affiliated with any one particular country, it's not like a US project or it's not a Chinese mining facility. Like, it's everywhere in the world.
It's an internet project, bro.
Exactly, it's open source. It can be, given that fact, it can be argued that countries, institutions, and various people worldwide, in the long run, if they're smart, of course, they are disincentivized from banning or restricting Bitcoin's use and development. And why is that? It is because given the fact that Bitcoin is designed to exist, and not only exist, but also thrive in an adversarial environment, a particular country, say the United States, stands to lose by banning Bitcoin, as the developers, the users, the companies, and everyone using and working on Bitcoin, which is an industry at the forefront of technological and economic innovation, all of these people would simply relocate to a more accommodating jurisdiction. And given the tense international relations and rivalry among the world's superpowers like the US and China and etc., it is practically impossible to imagine that all of these countries would cooperate together to dismantle Bitcoin with like some multi-nation coordinated attack against Bitcoin mining. Like, why? Like, they never done that. That would be unprecedented, and they would never do that. Like, at least that's my belief. So the fact that, also, the fact that we were talking about a lot about the US dollar today. The fact that the US dollar, it has been the world's reserve currency for the last half a century, if not more, gives the United States an unfair advantage over the rest of the world, because every other country depends on the U.S. monetary policy. Like, so many countries hold.
And I think it's imperative to tie oil into this in particular. So the petrodollar, I think, is a more apt description of what you're describing. So like every country in the world needs to convert their native currency into U.S. dollars to buy oil from Saudi Arabia and OPEC right now. So, and oil is obviously the go-to fuel choice for the world.
Exactly, and U.S. is taking advantage of all of that to basically ensure that its claws are like very deep inside the system.
Yeah, we're getting a little vague on everything. If you're going to buy oil, you got to go through us.
Exactly, and so the idea is that I think that many countries, if not most of them, stand to gain from Bitcoin's adoption, as that adoption would remove their dependence on the US dollar and provide them with a very feasible alternative. And I think that it is likely that in the future that some nations are going to start adopting Bitcoin as a reserve currency. And the what I just said, the value proposition that Bitcoin has as a alternative global money store value will become increasingly clear. And to talk about the incentives that exist outside of just like hodlers hodling and miners mining and basically all of that. Yeah.
It's like, what happens when the first central bank does announce that they're putting Bitcoin on their reserves? Do you think it incites a mad dash, or do you think?
Yeah, I think it will most likely have some kind of domino effect, like where others like, oh God, we need to do this quickly too,
Right.
Yeah, we don't want to be the nobody wants to be the first, nobody wants to be the last. So as long as
I'm interested to see who the wily central bank out there in the world is who doesn't even wait for a custodial fucking service and just buys a bunch of treasures, goes full Chad. I mean, maybe figures it out.
We don't know. Maybe they're already doing it like with mining. They can mine it and people wouldn't know that they're like buying.
Well, it's obvious that the Venezuelan government is. I mean, it's been proved. They've confiscated mining hardware and used it themselves. So there definitely is a government mining out there.
Yeah.
So it does that, but Venezuela, maybe that's not the first domino to follow. Maybe it needs to be like
that domino is not very stable to fall in the first place. Okay, I'm sorry. We shouldn't laugh about this. It's actually very tragic what's going on in Venezuela. And
yes.
And I think that I hope that Bitcoin will do its best to help relieve people from what is going on there and from all the tyranny. Yeah. But I think we're moving towards that direction where Bitcoin can help whoever you are on the socio economic hierarchy. It doesn't matter whether you are, I don't know, some important person in the Fed, or if you are somebody who has a lot of difficulty meeting, just like getting by in their everyday life, like in Venezuela, they can still take advantage of what Bitcoin gives them and basically better their financial and just like human standing in this point in time and later too.
Yeah, I'm very optimistic. I'm very impressed by the sort of the strength of some of the Venezuelans, particularly in the Bitcoin community, that are working hard to make things better and make things as good as possible, considering the situation.
Absolutely.
And just to be clear, like I was saying, it's not a very good domino for other governments to follow. Like, it's not palatable for governments to follow Maduro down a path of mining Bitcoin. But I do think, like, Chiefy, shout out Chiefy. He has a Chiefy Nundum. He was on this podcast like a year and a half ago.
I remember that one.
He went pretty dark, and I think he's been on a mission to convince some African central banks to think about maybe acquiring some Bitcoin. And I think that is a situation maybe where like a Ghana or a Nigeria Zimbabwean central bank decides to put some Bitcoin on their balance sheet. I think that could be a good first domino to fall. That would make people wake up and be like, oh shit.
Yeah, I mean the risk reward is just like, so it could, like, the risk is there. Of course there's a risk. Of course there's risk in anything, but the potential reward is just so huge that not allocating at least a very small percent of your wealth into Bitcoin does increasingly seem very irrational. Like, because maybe, who knows, maybe in 10 years you'll have to rebalance your portfolio because now that makes 99% of what you have, you know?
Right.
Because that's what happened to some people when they did that.
It's again, I've been telling like the asymmetry of the payoff to the loss at this point, at this particular juncture, at a $70 billion market cap, $4,000 per BTC cost roughly. It's better than sports gambling and buying lottery tickets. I was at the bodega earlier. There's just like people at the bodega, especially down the street from me. It's like a very hot lottery bodega.
Oh, God.
There's just like always people buying scratch-offs, scratching them, just like waiting in there for like 20 minutes to win. It's like, I just always think, like, download the Cash App instead of spending $20 on these scratch-offs. Like, just buy Bitcoin.
Like, that is evil,
right?
You know, that's like the devil. Not in disguise. It's like the devil, like,
my mom
in
plays
front of
the
your face.
lottery, and she knows it pisses me off. I'm like, Ma, please stop.
Like,
playing
the chances
the
are
lottery.
so small that you'll never win. So
Yeah,
what's the
for
point?
any of you freaks out there playing the lottery, please stop. And sports gambling, just don't stop. Just stop. You're just burning money.
Yeah,
Burning
absolutely.
money.
Your chances of making a huge return by investing into Bitcoin are definitely, absolutely
More promising than winning the lottery.
No question. Like, I feel bad even making this parallel.
Right?
Bitcoin is not, sports betting is not even worthy of being mentioned in the same sentence as Bitcoin.
No.
But anyways,
So if you're looking to pay your bookie in a somewhat synonymous way, Bitcoin may be your option.
Are they legalizing, like, a lot of?
It's legalized here in
New York?
Jersey, I believe.
New
I believe
Jersey. Everyone goes to New Jersey, like, during the games.
I believe it's coming to the New York State soon. I would imagine that starts a domino effect too. So.
Yeah. So another, coming back to the article, I wrote about the incentives that are more general in terms of, like, how to incentivize people to do things. And I think that we realize more and more, time and again, that people, they are not willing to really change themselves, change the way they act, change the way they go about their life, get out of their comfort zone, whatever. Because they have little to gain from whatever you ask them to do. And that doesn't really create any meaningful results. But what, on the other hand, does is incentivizing these people, is creating aligned system of incentives where there's certain intended behavior that you are seeking out from them is rewarded in a way that they value and in a way that they want to continue to act accordingly. And like nowadays, like I always hear like how people complain about like, you know, Amazon is so evil, or I don't know, this company is so evil, they are paying this much, they're not paying enough, they should be doing this. And like you have to think that we all, like every single person, wants the best for everyone else. I mean, of course there are people who are evil, but I think on average, like everyone would wish that the world would be a better place. But like that's not enough, and just wishing and hoping is definitely like the world turns out very differently than what we want it to be.
Don't tell the socialists that.
So I think that once again, that human greed stands in the way of any decision, any desired change, or any impact that we want to see happen in the world. And we need to understand that, like, oftentimes people have no choice but to forgo or give up on their quote-unquote moral beliefs or quote-unquote social responsibility in the face of financial and personal difficulties. So, like, most people are simply trying to, like, you really need to understand that, like, most of this world is just trying to get by, earn
dude.
something, and provide for their families. That's it.
Most of this country is paycheck to paycheck.
Exactly.
And even that, like, it's a stretch. Like,
exactly. And then walking around, like, blaming everyone for the fact that they are not doing something for the sake of something else. Like, sometimes you're just asking too much. Like, you know, these people are, they once again, we all prioritize ourselves. Not because we're selfish. I mean, we are selfish to some extent, but it's because we're human. If you don't do this, then you're
not going to survive.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Exactly what I wanted to. And most people are just trying to get by. And in the light of understanding this, it becomes increasingly clear that expecting people to get out of their way to do something for someone else is like counterintuitive, like, you know, sometimes, like, of course not always, but like, and at least it will definitely not create sustainable results. So I like to think about the fact that, like, humanitarian and philanthropic efforts, they don't, like, scale very well, and like redistribution schemes that
they always
like
turn
a lot
out
of
to be
people
scams, dude. Anything like a foundation or like.
Yeah, well,
like the Red Cross turns out to like never get as much.
90% of like the aid that went to Africa actually got like lost in like some bureaucratic.
Yeah,
or
probably got spent on marketing or some shit. Like.
Or just basically stolen.
Yeah,
that's actually very sad. And so basically, these humanitarian efforts don't scale, and the redistribution schemes that we just talked about, they're too vulnerable to some kind of, like, you know, single points of failure. And like eventually human greed is the cause of all the reasons why it doesn't turn out the way we want it to be, finds its way to like somehow penetrate into that system and like make itself known, like
captures it.
Exactly. And I think that the biggest impact that anything can have, and anything does have, comes from aligned incentives and rewarding individuals for a positive change that you want to see, and any change for that matter. So these are the systems that are scalable, the ones that include incentives, like a incentive system that actually works and that actually rewards people for maintaining and acting in accordance with the rules. And they work, these systems, because they don't depend on the finite sources of human compassion, like humanitarian or philanthropic, or like some kind of efforts that people are demanding. You have to do this. No, you have to pay them higher wage. No, you have to spend this much on this, I don't know, social project. Well, yes, sure. The thing is that, like, whenever you hear, like, I don't know, the society, like, I don't know, society, just people screaming, like, Amazon, do this, you have to, Jeff Bezos, you have to spend your billions on these people, or give it away. Like, what happens most of this time? Like,
it gets allocated shittily. Like,
it gets allocated shittily.
So there was, I wrote about this in the Bent, I believe it was last week, like, especially with tax dollars, like the military industrial complex in particular is a fucking shining example of how wasteful and inefficient the government is with our tax dollars. A story came out in particular that the government was buying face cream, moisturizer in small tubes, typically worth $30 over the counter. They were paying $14,000 per tube. They spent $65 million on face cream and paid $14,000 per tube for a $30 tube of face cream. Like, that is where our tax money's going. And you have a growing call of socialism in this country and a Green New Deal in this country and a new infrastructure project in this company. And how can we honestly feel okay handing our money over to a system that is that terribly inefficient? They are paying 550 times the amount of the cost of the face cream, for...
That is just incredibly...
Hold it to your mouth. Yeah. Like,
it's the fact that people don't understand that, like, central planning...
You thought they overpaid by, like, 1x. They overpaid by 550x. You were like, oh, what would they pay, like $80?
I thought that was, like, too much. Maybe
you thought it was like
50
20%. Like,
yeah,
no. They paid $14,000 for, like, a 16-ounce tube of cream. Are you fucking kidding me? And people want to fucking take more tax money from people.
No, but they're going to redistribute it to the people in need. I'm kidding. I hope they do, but, like, it's not because, once again, not because they're necessarily bad or good. It's because, like, humans are that way, that they are self-motivated. They are going to prioritize themselves. They are going to be able to somehow sneak into the system and somehow, like, take piece of the pie for themselves. And that's okay. But you need to understand, you need to come to terms with that and work from there. You can't just, like, hope that everyone is going to be infinitely compassionate and we're going to live in a happy world. Like, it's okay. It's okay for people not to always be angels, you know? And, well, coming back to, like, no matter how much you scream at someone and tell them to pay a higher wage or give away their power, like, they're not going to do that. Like, what is going to happen is that, like, their PR team is going to launch a little campaign, make a minimal effort, only just to simply maintain the brand image, and that's it. Like, because why? Because such methods don't create meaningful results, as the incentives are on the individual level. They're not aligned. They're one-sided. The individuals on one side stand to benefit, the ones who demand the change, while the individuals on the other side, they stand to lose. They have to give up much of what they're already so used to. Like, why the hell would they do that, right? You know, I'm not gonna give up something. I'm speaking from their perspective. And Bitcoin is fundamentally different. Bitcoin has created this unique incentive system where the incentives are aligned on both sides. And this comes back to the idea that adoption of Bitcoin has great potential to benefit all kinds of people on individual level. Like I said, like, no matter where you are on the socio-economic hierarchy, you are going to be better off. Mm-hmm. And that's amazing.
Right.
It's like the incentives. It's not a fixed pie. Like this here, we are not dividing it. We're not redistributing. We're creating it. You know, we're creating value.
Right, and it's why. I don't want to sound pompous here, but, like, why is it so hard for people to understand that? Like, let's get into, like, people not understanding money, I guess, unless you're still got some time to go down this thought experiment.
Yeah, no, just to conclude with the incentives, I think what I wrote in the article in the end, I said, don't expect people to be good, expect people to act in their own self-interest. And if everybody acts in their self-interest in a system of rules that rewards good behavior, then good behavior emerges naturally. So I think that is precisely what Bitcoin is doing. Mm-hmm. Instead of hoping and demanding people to change and to be different, to go against their human nature in certain ways, it doesn't try to denounce human nature. Instead, it embraces it and makes the best of it. It turns it on its head and ensures its integrity.
And again, like, maybe it's obvious to us because we've been in this for so long, but, like, how do you think, or what is the fastest course through which people can come to this understanding? And this realization?
Mm.
Have you had many breakthroughs trying to explain Bitcoin to no coiners? Or
I think I'm in the process of like getting closer to that breakthrough with a lot of people, and I think it takes time. And once again, I think it takes you can't just sit down one night and explain everything and have them and bring them on your side.
no.
You can't do that. You need a number of interactions. You need a certain number of like signals that you send them. Like they need to, like, you know how we always talk about how, like, the first time I read about Bitcoin in 2013, I was like, oh, what is this scam? Then I read about it. Oh, 2014. Oh, it's still around. Interesting. Then 2015. Oh, it's rising in price. Blah 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 blah. Oh, 2017. Maybe I should freaking get into this because it doesn't seem to fail. It just goes. It's anti-fragile. It's all of those good things, like, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And the more the more times you get exposed to it, the more you're like, it's like listening to a song. Like the first time you listen, it sucks. Second time you listen, it's okay. And then the third time, oh my god, I'm in love with the song.
This is a banger, bruh.
You know?
No, I
So
know that feeling. Yeah, no,
it doesn't seem to go away. And if
Takes
something
multiple
doesn't go away,
touches.
maybe you should pay attention to it.
No, and that's something you talk about, like something I learned from the podcast advertising game at Barstool and something like that. When you're pitching advertisers, like, it takes multiple touches to get through
Yep.
to consumers, and I think as Bitcoiners and as people tried to explain and educate people about this technology and this movement, I would call it, this revolution, this mission that we're on, I think as a collective we should work to get the amount of touches needed to have a sort of aha moment when explaining to newbies. We should target a very low number and try to decrease the number of touches as much as possible.
Yeah. And
I think that's been the mission of this bear market. Like you say, you find a lot of the signal through the noise when things quiet down and prices aren't as volatile as they were in 2017. And that's something in this bear market in particular that I don't really believe happened last bear market, at least definitely not as intensely as it is this time around, is people really working on sharpening the narrative and streamlining the message through which people come to understand Bitcoin.
yeah, so I think the bear market is a great thing. The bear market allows you to accumulate more Bitcoin. The Bitcoin allows you to learn about Bitcoin more and from better sources, because it's not like crazy panicky environment where everyone is just
It's not some
talking
anime
about it and you
character
can't
telling you what to trade and what to pump and stuff like
exactly. Yeah, you can just you can take your time. Once again, like you remember with the savings, you can take your time and think about like what I should invest in and whether, and you have the time to inevitably have a higher level of conviction, because if you study Bitcoin enough, then I'm almost certainly sure that you will be convinced.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. And I think we're getting close, man. I think people are starting to question. There's a lot of macro events, not events, themes. A lot of macro themes sort of coalescing right now that are very much pushing people towards Bitcoin, I would argue. They may not know it, the people that are being pushed towards it, but they're the events happening around the world. Obviously, populism, hyperinflation in some countries like Venezuela, Argentina, sort of nationalism, Brexit, the euro, having a lot of strife.
It's not coming out of nowhere,
right?
There are reasons why that is happening. People, exactly as you said, they might not be consciously aware of it, but like the social unconscious, or like, I don't know, even on a deeper level, like they know that there's something wrong, and they know that like this is unfair. Like, what the hell? Why am I being paid less? Why is my purchasing power decreases? Why
am I being taxed more?
Yeah.
Like, how am I losing my purchasing power and getting taxed more every year at the same time? Like, again,
whereas like the world that we live in is fundamentally like when people discredit when they like attack deflation, like deflationary spirals, blah 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 blah.
That brings me back to like what I was saying earlier. Like, is there a conspiracy? Like, how can you honestly think deflation is bad? How can you think that the ability to buy more things with the money that you've accrued is a bad thing?
The most important industry in this world, technology, is the most prime example of deflation
working and creating value.
Exactly. Yeah.
2 people created Instagram, a $4 billion company when it sold to Facebook.
Like, you have to understand that like people like if deflation were bad, then why would people be willing to buy an iPhone XS or whatever today over buying it next year? Because the next year is going to decrease in price and you will be able to buy it much cheaper. Like people are still willing to consume. It's not a problem of demand. I think it was Jeff Deist, the president of Mises Institute, on the Stefan Livera's podcast in the beginning of January. He said that there's no problem with demand. You don't need to stimulate demand. There's always demand. Everyone wants bigger house. Everyone wants more stuff.
Right?
It's not a problem there's no problem with that. It's a problem of
people's imaginations are infinite, and
exactly.
imaginations come with desires.
You shouldn't be scared of deflation. Like it's fine. Like you are supposed to. Like as we have better technology, we are supposed to be able to consume better things. We are supposed to become more efficient. We're supposed to become more productive, and that's fine.
Right? And this brings me back to like, is there like a fucking conspiracy like on the monetary level to like hold back society, hold back humanity to an extent?
Once again, I don't think there's like I don't think you should frame it as a conspiracy. I think that's the way the things played out, and that type of reality benefits certain people who are able to maintain. Well, I mean, not really anymore.
Maintain, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
They might not be able to maintain it for much longer.
Yeah, I don't think the dollar is going to keep its purchasing power that much longer.
I think I can hear the fat lady warming up in the corner. I think she's working those vocals right now, going through the bars.
Yeah, so I think it's not necessarily a conspiracy. It's just that like that's the way things played out, and they benefit certain people at the cost of other people, and nobody really wants to change anything, or at least those who do are unable to, but we will see from now on.
Yeah.
And yeah, so where were we before this?
We were just riffing there.
Yeah.
But so like talking about like, is there a conspiracy, an immoral conspiracy or whatever, like positing that question. Obviously you don't think it's conspiracy, you think it's more Cunningham's Law. Is it Cunningham's Law or Occam's Razor? Occam's Razor. That's what it is. Speaking of that, like Bitcoin, let's get into this. Like Bitcoin is just software, and is it amoral, or is there a moral argument to be made for
Thank
Bitcoin?
You. Thank you for that perfect segue.
You're welcome. I'm king of segues here.
So I think that morality is definitely something that has definitely been a recurring theme through this episode for us. But I think morality is something that people are always concerned with, and they always make these value judgments and try to say like, oh, this is moral, no, this is immoral, like, you know. But I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I don't think that Bitcoin is either moral or immoral. It is amoral, which is different. And people always confuse the words immoral with amoral.
Yeah.
Immoral means that something does not conform to accepted standards of morality, whereas amoral means that something is unconcerned with the rightness or the wrongness or the nature of that.
Morality is derived on the layer above that.
Exactly.
That amoral layer.
And I think this is the beauty of Bitcoin, that it's not moral, it's immoral, it's unconcerned, it's amoral. And
the people who use it are immoral or moral.
And probably some people, if they were to listen to this, they'd be like, what do you mean? If it's immoral, if it's not moral, then why is it good, right? But you have to understand that what is considered moral today is considered immoral tomorrow, and vice versa. And this happens all the time throughout human history. People are very, very prone to changing their opinions and minds and traditions about different things. And like, I'm sure there are things that we do today in our daily life that would be deemed just absolutely horrendous and inappropriate maybe several decades ago even, let alone 100 centuries. And there's going to be stuff that
gay marriage, bruh.
I know, yeah, exactly. Like, that's ridiculous to think about that. I mean, still. But anyways, the point is that the point is that we change, and nobody is constant. And this idea of morality, it also changes. It's very, very prone to being subject to trends. So you can't really like say Bitcoin is moral, because if Bitcoin is moral today, probably tomorrow somebody's gonna come out and say, like, this is immoral, man. Like, we've changed and this no longer fits our understanding of reality.
It depends what your hashtag flavor of the week is.
Exactly. Yes, you can't.
You know.
And
just a few weeks, people were coming to the fence at Jussie Smollett, and there's a lot of crickets on Twitter.
Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, I don't try to really delve into.
We don't need to delve into that. If you guys want to delve into that, I highly recommend going and finding the Charles Barkley clip from TNT basketball last night during the halftime show and his comments on the situation. Some of the funniest comedy I've seen in a long time. And that's all we have to say about that.
Yeah, but I think it's a good example of just like looking at events like that. It's a good example to be able to understand how fickle the reality is, and how like today
reality can be manufactured.
Exactly. Like what I like to say is that, like, you know, he or she or they, whoever, who is powerful is the one who is able to manipulate the truth, because the truth is not absolute. The truth is always subject to the trends, to
context.
Exactly. Yeah. And if you can manipulate the truth, then you got it.
Right.
But exactly, that's when we come to Bitcoin. Bitcoin minimizes the ability to manipulate this truth. Anyways, so as I was saying, Bitcoin is just software. It's not concerned with morality. And being concerned with morality isn't necessarily good, because as we just established, morality is always changing, and morality is super subjective. Like, somebody might think this is moral, I might think this is immoral. Like, you know, it doesn't matter,
right?
Like, you know,
you want a tool that both of you can use, regardless of what you view as moral or immoral.
Exactly. Like, I mean, with the internet, I mean, this has been said many times. Like, the first uses of the internet were porn. I don't know them, drug dealers or whatever. I don't know, and people back in the 90s, they would say, like, no, we're never going to use something that, like, I don't know, porn websites use for. But now we see that everything has changed, and porn only makes up a very small, very tiny percent of what internet is all about. You know?
Right.
For those who try to discredit Bitcoin by saying, oh, no, this drug dealer used Bitcoin once. Yeah, okay.
Money launderers.
More drug dealers are definitely using dollars. The most drug dealers and most criminals in the world are using dollars.
And hey, for you freaks out there who are not aware, HSBC has been fined in the past for creating specific teller windows fashioned in a certain way so Mexican drug lords could launder cash in briefcases through a traditional banking system. So
why didn't you hear more about that type of stuff?
What?
You don't hear much about that type of stuff.
No, you never hear about it. You don't hear about UBS got fined this week $4 billion, I believe, for money laundering. Nobody's going to UBS's headquarters and threatening to shut them down or telling governments to shut them down.
Oh yeah, no, because there are a lot of more important things, and there are more important things, but definitely not the ones that are being publicized more than the events where billions of dollars. Like,
right? So it's like a false equivalency, and that's why I'm so optimistic about Bitcoin. It's like, all right, these are like your biggest arguments, and like Jamie Dimon screaming about this shit as the system that he works within is enabling it tenfold. It's like, all right, like it works for you, so it will probably work for us too in the future. So,
oh man, I love Bitcoin. So the point is that Bitcoin is amoral, which allows it to. No, it doesn't allow anything. It's just like Bitcoin is, like, as they say, Bitcoin is, and that's enough. So Bitcoin doesn't make value judgments. Bitcoin doesn't discriminate because it cannot. It's just software that is a consensus of all these different people around the world that you cannot really change in your favor, you know? And unlike the traditional system that we live in, that we operate in today, Bitcoin is not partial towards anyone. Bitcoin is not malleable, and it cannot be interpreted in a certain way to benefit one party or another party, like law often is. Like, you can't hire a more expensive lawyer who has a good team of other lawyers who are going to basically make sure that you are going to win in court. That's not going to happen. Like,
yeah, it comes
code
down
is
to
law, and that's when Ethereum did the
DAO fork.
The DAO fork. That's when they lost all the credibility, and they can never recover from that.
I was actually, I don't think I've ever admitted this on this podcast, but I was an Ethereum bull until the DAO fork. I was like, all right, you just completely shot yourself in the foot.
How is that
there.
different from what we work with today? I mean, how is that like? This is the same thing. People just change whatever they don't like, and that's it. But no, that's how truth is so subjective. So like Ethereum Classic is the real Ethereum. Like, you know,
right?
What the hell?
It is the original chain. Like
Yeah.
If I were to set up
Ethereum is the Bitcoin Cash.
Is it Bitcoin SV now? How many times have they forked since? Right? And it's like, all right, let's have a little tangent riff on Ethereum here. Like, dude, their transition to 2.0, like, you want to talk about like propaganda and Orwellian word speak. Ethereum has basically admitted that the first iteration of their project is a complete and utter failure. Like, they had to create a whole new chain to make their vision practical. And on top of that, it's apparently, like, I've read the specs, like, it's a 10-phase process that may happen, or excuse me, a 7-phase process that may happen over the course of 10 years.
Compound the probabilities of that and see how successful that
especially
can be.
like, it's like, all right, we have phase 1 figured out, we have phase 2 figured out, and we have parts of phase 3 figured out, but we'll figure out the rest of the 4.5 phases going
We'll just
forward.
wing it.
We're going to wing it. It's like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, but like, sometimes I feel like I'm taking crazy pills. People are still standing by, like, saying that it's legitimate, it's decentralized, it's successful, it's useful, it has utility. And is their MakerDAO really worth that much?
I don't know. Like, to be honest, I don't. I try to keep an open mind, but throughout time, I have decreased the amount of time that I spend like looking and learning about other projects, because like I realize that more and more that there aren't that many things except for Bitcoin that are actually worthy of my or anyone else's time, really.
Yeah.
And yeah, there might be some kind of projects that are interesting and that might I don't think that like I don't know. I don't think that all altcoins are scams per se, but most of them are either very, very disillusioned, and they are unable to really get a grip with reality, and that's why they're going somewhere. They don't know where, and they hope that it's going to work out. But I don't think that if we're trying to rebuild the global financial system, we can't
fucking wing it on the go.
That's not going to work.
Right. That's what draws me to Bitcoin, and why I tend to focus on Bitcoin in particular and on this podcast, is because it feels like it's a project that works, and it's basically like a stone where you're basically carving the David out of it.
Yeah.
And just
that's
basically
cool
tightening and refining it, and you're not sort of figuring out what the stone is that you're going to eventually carve the David into. Like, we've already started, we're a decade in, and just perfecting it at this point.
I like that metaphor. So as I was saying, like, Bitcoin is fundamentally different from the world that we live in today, because it is not malleable in the same way that the current system is. Like, the law is malleable. Like, if you have the best lawyer, then chances are you're going to win in the court, you know? And there's no leeway. There's no room for interpretation. There's no malleability. All these things create massive vulnerabilities and create massive, like, single points of failure that Bitcoin does best to eliminate.
Mm-hmm.
Which
it's a messaging protocol. It's like, hey, you sent this at this time.
Yeah.
And now it sits here, and if you have this private key, you can move this UTXO.
Yeah.
Is that too simple? Or is
no, I think Bitcoin is... I think Murat says this, and Vortex says this all the time. Bitcoin is just... not exactly, but you should think of it as an Excel spreadsheet with a strictly limited number of rows and columns.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's like basically like Manhattan real estate, but unlike Manhattan real estate, they can vertically basically go up and increase the number of apartments or whatever.
It's quasi two-dimensional.
Yeah, it's quasi two. That's awesome. Yeah, and if you want to have access, if you want to own a cell in this Excel spreadsheet, then you'll have to pay that premium.
Mm-hmm.
You can't it cannot be expanded beyond 21 million, and that's it. Like, because money, like, you have to understand what money is. Like, once again, I had this tweet the other day that said, if you don't have a deep understanding of what money is, functions of money, monetary history, money properties that fulfill its various functions, then don't you dare to criticize Bitcoin. And who the hell are you? Like, who are you? How are you an authority to tell me why Bitcoin is bad or good?
So people are so quick.
Bitcoin is bad.
Right?
wait, do you know what Bitcoin is? No, but I know its price. It's crazy. Like, most people, 99% of the people, they don't know what Bitcoin is. And they have never heard of what Bitcoin, I mean, maybe they have, but they don't know what Bitcoin is. They only know what its price is. Even the ones who say that, oh, I know Bitcoin. No, you don't know Bitcoin. You only know that it's 3,800 and it lost 84% of its value since its all-time high, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, that's not the point. You don't understand the value proposition. Then if you don't understand what Bitcoin is, how can you even know what it should be worth?
It, right?
Exactly.
How can you attempt to critique it?
Or to value it? How can you do that? You can't.
That's my favorite troll to the no-coiners on Twitter. Shout out Adam Singer, David Gerard. Just be like, all right, how does Bitcoin work? Have you ever downloaded a wallet, used a private key? Like, explain how Bitcoin works to me and why you hate it, and how, try to come at me with like reasoned debate about why Bitcoin working the way it does is bad or good for society. And 9 times out of 10, it's like, no clear answer. Like, nobody can do it. Like, nobody puts in the effort to understand what they're critiquing. And that's the funny thing, like, I find about, like, Bitcoiners debating. Like I got in, like, a little debate with, like, a Finnish economist, like, from the bank, the Central Bank of Finland today on Twitter. Like, I got into
there's so many economists.
Right? But it's like, that's where I think we're also advantaged as Bitcoiners. I think we, like, especially you and I in particular, where we had the fortune of studying economics in college and really understanding, like, the belly of the monster that we're trying to destroy, and, like, not trying to destroy, but trying to replace, and for good reasons, not for anything evil. Really. We honestly think this is a better system, but we understand both more innately than they only understand one side. And it's like, that gives me comfort in knowing that, like, all right, I've actually done my homework and you haven't.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That's, and again, talking about the asymmetry of the potential returns, like, this information asymmetry, like, still exists. Like, there's a huge chasm between people who've actually studied traditional economics and Bitcoin and trying to see where Bitcoin fits into a world of economics. And I do believe, like, if you understand, I could be wrong. We could be wrong. I concede that. But if you do believe that you truly understand both, it becomes obvious that Bitcoin is the natural progression of money, especially as we move into the information age,
exactly,
into
like
the digital
internet.
age. There's nothing, like, it's a no-brainer if you understand the trend that we're on right now.
Yeah, I read the other day, internet allowed you to never have to go to the library, and Bitcoin will allow you to never have to go to the bank. As simple as that.
Saw somebody try to steal that tweet.
Don't get me started.
All right, we won't get into it.
The amount of people that steal, like, your content on Twitter, it's just ridiculous. I don't understand, like, why people do that, and they don't even
be flattered. You should be flattered.
Oh yeah, I guess. But, like, to be honest, no. Like, this time it was a respectable account that did it. Before before it was just random people. But anyways, I don't hold grudge. Anyways, as I was saying, you were talking about the traditional, like, how we are fortunate enough to have an education in economics and understand some parts of it. But to be honest, like, I feel like the traditional system, like traditional academia, especially, like, with regards to economics, it doesn't really teach you everything that you need to know.
No, I'm not saying, like, it's good knowledge. No, I'm saying it's good to know when you're debating these people, like, their premise and where they're coming from.
It's
easier
to
understand.
Yeah,
I
definitely agree with that.
With debate, like, hey, I fucking studied this. I know exactly what you were talking about. And this is.
And you're disregarding so much.
Yes, exactly.
You're just like, you're disregarding so many schools of thought, so many years of research, so many piles of data and evidence. It's just funny, like, you know?
Right? It's the cognitive, like, it's been another theme on this podcast. The cognitive dissonance that exists in the world in all aspects of life is mind-blowing. Like, it worries me. Like, cognitive dissonance is synonymous with detachment from reality. And it's like, I just want people to get closer to reality. Like, yes, the reality, especially our debt situation in the world, may be shit. It may be pretty dire. But, like, let's just acknowledge it and try to figure out how to fix it. And that's why we have this podcast. That's why I write the bent. That's why you tweet. That's why you write. Like, we think Bitcoin is a solution to this overarching problem that's causing people to put their heads in the sand. And it's like, all right, let's get our heads out of the sand and have a reasoned debate. The solution may exist. We're working on building out the infrastructure to make it happen. And anybody can participate. We're looking for help. If you're down for the cause, let's make it happen.
It's amazing how open this is. Like, come join. Like, you know?
Right?
You're not restricted. I'm not the boss here. There's no CEO who is going to be like...
Right?
Who is going to interview you.
No.
Who may know your father who went to the same frat as he did, and now he's going to get you in, you know,
into Bitcoin
because they were friends and now you have the connection. No, it's just because if you can contribute, if you want to contribute, if you are on board with this,
if you are willing and able, Bitcoin is there for you to help out.
Yeah,
and the mission is clear. Like, we're here,
and regardless of whether you're doing that, it will still help you. In
exactly.
the end. It's like a merciless force.
You will submit to the will of Bitcoin.
Wait, no, not merciless. I'm sorry. It's merciful. It's actually even if you hate it,
even if the no coiners spewing against it, it's going to help your life in the long run.
It's going to make you better off in the end.
Yeah, even though we don't like you, Bitcoin doesn't.
Sorry, Bitcoin. You're merciful, not merciless. That's definitely not what I was supposed to say. But also, it's merciless in is going to not let anyone stand in its way. So it's both.
Yes, exactly.
So with regards to the traditional academia and the education, like you don't really get to learn much about the unorthodox, so to speak, quote unquote,
that's
schools of thought of like in economics.
So I've read about this in the think about like how crazy, like the fact that it's not so obvious that it is crazy that economics at most universities, I can't speak.
They don't even say anything about.
They don't even preach it. Like, so you're supposed to, like, if you like think about the concept of majoring in a subject and going to master that subject,
you at least have to know, like,
you should know the whole spectrum
types of ideas,
the
there,
schools
right?
of thoughts at least.
Exactly.
But no, you're like literally confined and siloed to this one school of thought.
Yeah,
exactly. You get a degree that says, "Hey, I mastered the subject," but really you didn't. You mastered one school of thought in a subject that's been growing for thousands of years.
Yeah, like in psychology, you got Freudian, you got Gestalt, you've got, I don't know, Jungian. Mm-hmm. You look at every different one, you take the best from each because none of them are actually like absolute truth.
Yeah.
But here, no, we're just Keynesians. That's all.
Right. But nobody...
And don't you dare talk about those Austrians.
Oh, my gosh, don't.
One
time I had a presentation and I had some slides with like Zero Hedge data. Like Zero Hedge pulled some slides from the Fed research and I just screenshotted, attributed it to them, but like got yelled at by a professor. Like, don't use that like propaganda site. Like,
what? No.
It's like, are you kidding me? Like that's how like... And this was back when Zero Hedge was pure. Like back in like 2010, 2011, like when they were like fresh off the financial crisis, really like data driven and not fear mongering as hard as they are now. Definitely fear mongering a little bit, but like it was more data driven back in that day. And yet it was data.
Don't you use it? Don't you dare, Marty.
Right?
Why? Because it doesn't fit your narrative?
Exactly.
Much?
Exactly.
Huh? So unfortunately, you kind of have to make your own way into the rabbit hole of Austrian economics. I mean, of course, it's driven by Bitcoin, but yeah, to be honest, like most of the Austrian econ that I've learned about was on my own, like reading books or on the internet. Or
Mises, like I got into Austrian economics in college again via Zero Hedge, like sharing Mises.org articles that were written.
It's an amazing course. Like there's so many, the amount of resources that are available for free, it's crazy. Like you don't need to buy anything. There's so many books and articles.
Right?
Yeah.
It's go read Jörg Guido Holzmann. He's so pure, and listen to his talks. He's given plenty of talks on YouTube. We're lucky.
They're
lucky he's still young. He's still like in his 40s or early 50s, I believe. Yeah. And a great economic thinker. Like your profile picture is one of my favorite books on economics that I read in like the last 3 years. The Ethics of Money Production. Go read, like, on the Ethics Money Production, I literally have the 3 pages, like, embedded in my head, like, from page 70 to 72. He just perfectly describes, like, the inefficient capital allocation that happens in an easy monetary regime.
Because the price signals are distorted. And when the price signals are distorted, then clearly you're going to have inefficiencies. Clearly you're going to have misallocation of resources. It's like back in the Soviet Union, when the central planning committees, they were trying to make sure, they were trying to enforce these rules that a loaf of bread is supposed to be 1 ruble, wherever, be it in the very farthermost eastern point of Soviet Union, which is like Vladivostok, which is literally near Japan, or in Kaliningrad, which is literally like Poland, or like Germany, like near Germany, I think. It's just crazy.
Different populations,
different cultures, different everything, different economies, different resources.
So this highlights actually like a...
And they, sorry for interrupting. So they wanted to everywhere be 1 ruble. That is impossible. It's clearly going to be mispriced, and that leads to deficit almost all the time. And that's what was the case. Like people had to have some kind of tickets for
famous bread lines. Maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And all the shops were empty, and that doesn't work.
This actually, and like even like on a smaller microcosm in disaster scenarios where people fight for like price fixing, like during hurricane, like after a hurricane, if like a neighborhood's flooded, and what you'll see is like literally natural capitalistic things happen. Like people aren't gonna be able to get water or food into the city while there's a disaster going on. So you have prices for these goods sort of skyrocket, especially if like you have looting going on and people get like all the water, like they're going to start gouging people for it. And a lot of people would argue that like we need like civil price fixing during these times, but like you need to let these price discovery mechanisms play out in these scenarios as well, which is a highly debated and interesting topic to think about in that little microcosm.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
You got thoughts? Do you agree with that? Do you not agree with that?
I think that the markets are most efficient when they are left to their own devices.
Mm-hmm.
And like capitalism always wins. You have to understand that. And once again, like capitalism, like in the Soviet Union, the word capitalism was equivalent to like the worst curse. Like you're a capitalist. That's like worse than being the biggest offender, like criminal, which is like clearly, yeah. Of course, there's propaganda.
Yeah.
But Soviet, as we've seen, Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore. So that system didn't prove to be very efficient at allocating resources or doing anything else for that matter.
So let's jump into this. You're a native of a post-Soviet country.
Mm-hmm.
What was it like growing up in Azerbaijan? Like, how has Azerbaijan changed throughout your lifetime, throughout your parents' lifetime? What can you say as somebody from the Soviet bloc?
I think Azerbaijan changed definitely for the better after leaving. I mean, after the Soviet Union no longer existed, because it was able to, like back in the Soviet times, like every single republic, every single country that was part of the Soviet Union, they basically had to like answer to Moscow. So whatever Moscow says, that has to be done, and that really, I think, strips the little republic, little country, anything, any culture of
neuters them, right?
Yeah, of their independence, of their ability to evolve as a people, and that really creates this like form of mimicry that everyone's trying to be like these guys. Mm-hmm. But why should we be like these guys? We have our own traditions, we have our own culture. You can't just come and just say like you're going to live by our rules. And like Soviet Union has been like basically 70 years of absolutely involuntary just takeover of all these, exactly, of all these countries that have their own cultures, that have their own values that are different.
So what are the values of Azerbaijan?
The values of Azerbaijan, it's, I think, very...
Am I pronouncing that okay?
Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan.
Yeah. I
Is that
like
insulting? I'm sorry if I'm being insulting.
it's Azerbaijan.
Azerbaijan.
You won't forget it now.
It's my Philly accent coming out.
I think Azerbaijan. It's part of the Caucasus. So yeah, I mean, this is funny when everyone says I'm a Caucasian in America, and I'm like, really? No, you're.
I don't even know what that
Everyone's
means. Go to the
Caucasian.
Caucasus. I don't even know what that means.
Caucasus is like this area in the Caucasus Mountains, like near the Caucasus Mountains. It spans like a couple of countries: Azerbaijan, Georgia, some republics in Russia, like Dagestan, like some of these, and that's what Caucasus is. And
I never knew that.
Yeah,
Never knew that's where Caucasian came from.
yeah. I mean, yeah. That's it.
I've been forced to check
Caucasian
off
is white.
Caucasian my whole life. I have no idea what it fucking means.
So yeah, so I think that whole region and Azerbaijan, the values are really like familial values. Everyone pays respects to like elders, their families,
I
and
miss
that's. I never really had a culture shock because I was to a large extent exposed to like Western culture since childhood, but that's something that I feel is different here in the United States and in much of the many Western countries, is that like the connection between like within families is not always very like close. You know, like sometimes a child can be kicked out of the house when they're of age, or
There's no concept of the wayward son that's allowed to come back to open arms.
yeah. I mean, of course, it all depends on people.
The
Every
particular
person is
family,
different,
yes.
but like. Or like the elderly homes are definitely not as common in our region, because like people like you have to respect your parents, and
Have them
when
move in with
they
you.
are when they are become they need somebody to take care of them, they come live with you, or you you provide for them, you take care of them. So that is a difference, and like that is that's at the core of that kind of culture, like family values.
No, I agree, and I respect the fuck out of that. And as somebody who's been lucky enough to have, I mean, I don't want to say lucky that I've had 3 grandparents pass, but lucky that I've had 3 grandparents that were able to live sort of independently, until never lived in a home, and sort of lived with their spouses and their families throughout their lives, and then particularly like towards the end of their lives, especially the tail end of their lives, instead of dying in a hospital, all 3 of my grandparents up to this point have died on hospice, which is actually like a very powerful thing, like being able to be there during their last days and be with them in your own home or their home. There's something to be said about that, about being there and sort
Definitely.
of being at the core of where their family started. I'm getting emotional now. Like in their own
passing away
homes.
alone is definitely one of the saddest probably things
Yeah.
one can experience.
No, but it's something I hope in my family at least that tradition carries on.
Yeah, that's why I think you have to really try your best to garner and to cultivate these values within your own family. Like, you know, you care, you remember whose birthday is. You remember to call, your parents almost every day if you can. Like, you know, it doesn't become just some kind of a...
Yeah, Mom, I'm sorry for ignoring your call. We're recording, though. All right? Can't interrupt the call with a call from Mom. The recording with a call from Mom. No, but I think it is important. It's a bit taboo today, too, to talk about, like, a secure family in America in particular.
Like, there's definitely, like, some kind of shift in that sense. Like,
right?
Like family values are now the counterculture.
Right? No, exactly. And we were talking about Netflix earlier, and like people
short attention
going on
spans.
Netflix, but it's not even that. But like even the programming on Netflix, a lot of the shows are like a bunch of 30-somethings just wandering aimlessly through life, like not wanting to have kids,
polyamorously living,
doing drugs, like fucking everybody, and it's like it seems we are losing that family connection.
No, I think of course it's not for everyone. I'm not saying that a person who having a family is a good thing, but it's not like a prerequisite for life. There's some people are happy on their own, and that's completely fine, of course. But I think that if you can, then I think at some age it's probably kind of like it's nice, and it sets you on some kind of track. Like maybe if you're like 35, maybe you should think about maybe settling down. I mean, as opposed to maybe Actually, like I can't say anything because like everyone makes their own choices and decisions. I think I want to have a family at some point.
I definitely want to have a family too. And that's actually my wife and I we're gonna move closer to our families soon, and we just feel like a need to be closer to like our parents.
That's very nice. Yeah, well, being closest.
Yeah, not that we're that far, but like, yeah. No, it's interesting. All right, and that was getting emotional in Tales from the Crypt. I love it.
Cosmic, emotional, anything, whatever you ask.
Right.
We got it. Let's see.
So like, this is all right. This is a Bitcoin podcast. Let's tie Bitcoin into it. Like that's why I'm into Bitcoin, is thinking about future generations, and actually the concept of family and generational thinking and global thinking is something I'm very fascinated about. One concept in particular that fascinates the shit out of me that I think we should adopt as a society is the Iroquois Nation concept of a seven generation thinking. So like thinking 7 generations ahead, thinking about the people, your offspring and ancestors that don't even exist yet, and
Yeah, that's difficult.
they can't even call them ancestors; they're predecessors that don't even exist yet. Like, and so that's what Bitcoin has helped me to like. I don't want to get cheesy here, but like I do think about like, all right, I want to put some Bitcoin in time lock contracts that like my predecessors can access at some point in the future.
That's a really cool idea.
And like thinking 7 generations ahead and like lowering time preference and thinking about that.
Exactly, to make sure that
Bitcoin has me thinking about like, all right, I could fucking potentially leave like a 1/10 of a Bitcoin here for somebody 100 years from now. Like,
Yeah, so your family like gets by, you know?
yeah, exactly. And
Because
I probably would have never thought about doing like fucking burying cash in the backyard for somebody who lived on my land like thousands of years ago.
that's very impractical.
Right? Yeah. No, but it teaches how you changes your mental model and how you think about these things, and maybe it does incentivize like a better, more efficient, more happy humanity.
Yeah, no, I feel like there's a cultural paradigm shift that's going on. Like, and you start to really think, do I really want to buy some material good? Do I need a car? Do I need this? Maybe I should just like save this for the future.
Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Misir, it's been incredible. What are we on to next? We have, let me see what we have on the list. We already talked about Bitcoin is just software. Have we touched on we've touched on people don't understand money enough.
Yep.
Bitcoin appeals to everybody. I think this is
something that
I think this is the last topic that
Yeah.
we cover. So Bitcoin appeals to everybody. That's like people try to portray this vision of Bitcoin as a strictly libertarian, conservative, right wing, far right.
Oh God,
technology.
Please.
How does it appeal to everybody?
Spare me.
Unfortunately, I can't spare you. We have to dive into
I'm not
this.
talking to you. I'm talking to the archetype. So I think it's lack of education, and there's always going to be people who are ignorant, and who are always going to be trying to be vocal, despite the fact that they lack the necessary basic knowledge to know better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that so Bitcoin is a beautiful thing because it has the ability to have a universal appeal. It has the ability to make sense and be seen as something positive by very different type of people.
Mm-hmm.
Very different types of people. So I really think that it doesn't matter if you're a conservative, progressive, Republican, Democrat, rich or poor, and we've already talked about the rich and poor and how they are both able to benefit. It doesn't matter where you stand on the hierarchy. Some will say that Bitcoin is ideological. It is like Austrian econ, it's libertarian. And perhaps, but it is ideological. It's a grassroots movement, and like grassroots movements always need some kind of ideology, especially in the beginning, until it just becomes like sooner or later Bitcoin is just going to become so what? Bitcoin. Yeah, we all use it. Now what? Like, you know, it's so exciting because like we are at the forefront of this. We are at the very at the stem of this cultural shift. But soon within the next within the next century, I think Bitcoin is going to be an everyday thing. Like I use money. I use Bitcoin. Duh. But So I don't think that like we should really think that Bitcoin is like purely libertarian, purely this, purely that. It's not. It's on board with just like making the world fairer, better, more efficient, and just progressing the world further. And that's where we are supposed to be going. I think.
Right.
Maybe I'm getting something wrong, but pretty sure I'm not. So the chances are that when you are like I had this one post where I talked about how it's important to talk the way you talk about Bitcoin, and you should always think like when you're talking to a no coiner.
Think how you're approaching it.
How you're approaching it.
What
yeah.
their understanding is.
Exactly. Well, what they care about.
Yes.
Because Bitcoin has the ability to cater to all kinds of different needs, and I'm not trying to be like deceiving here or
snake oil.
I'm not trying to be like I'm gonna get you by talking about this thing. No, I'm just saying that Bitcoin is
so broad
and has the potential to impact the world in a positive way in so many different ways that different people care about those different things. So, and you should talk about those things that they care about, because like people want to listen to what the things that matter to them. And chances are that the person that you are talking to, not the no coiner, but even the person who just doesn't care or doesn't know, they're not passionate about any of these ideas. Like they're not libertarian, they're not Austrian econ head, or like they don't care. They're just essentially misinformed, and intentionally or unintentionally misinformed about a lot of like the economic processes and topics that relate to Bitcoin. And therefore you should be extremely careful with your choice of words sometimes. I mean, once again, like as I said, like Bitcoin is still going to win.
Yeah, it doesn't matter, but again,
it's going to accelerate it probably.
Yes, and going back to the concept.
Doesn't matter where they get
going
it
back
or
to the
hate it.
concept of decreasing the amount of touches needed to
exactly
reach
that.
an aha
We're
moment.
just optimizing that acceleration,
Exactly. So being able to diagnose how somebody may come to understand it in a different way than another person may is important to decreasing the amount of touches.
Yeah, but it's just so sad when you hear like all these like either mass media or like these even people who you would think who should know better. They're like, this is evil. This is doing this. This is doing that. Like, no, it's not. Bitcoin has the ability to like fix all these, not fix, but like at least ameliorate the state in which a lot of the things we care about and most people care about are in this day and time. Like crony capitalism. Like everyone's like, oh yeah, this.
That's one thing I agree. If I'm going to give Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez some props on, like I think she's doing a good job of calling out corruption and the crony capitalist sort of mentality that exists.
She's doing a great job
in Washington.
She's doing a great job at accelerating hyper-Bitcoinization. Props to her for that.
Yes, with her socialist tendencies, but I will give her props, like earnestly, saying like she is doing a good job of calling out like the convoluted incentives that exist, particularly with lobbying in DC.
Of course, that's true, but the way to approach it is probably not the most optimal way.
No, her prescription for fixing that problem is terrible.
We already talked about human nature and how you can't just like good, bad. But no,
I have hope that we can get through to the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortezes of the world. Like we can say, hey, we are diagnosing the problem the same way you are.
I mean, isn't that what we're trying to do right now?
Yeah. It's like your prescription is not what we would agree with, but like maybe you should like see our side. Like, so that's another thing I've been writing about in the Ben. Like a lot of the perceived framing of the debate is around fiscal policy, where it should be more monetary. It should be more monetary. Like that's the other thing about the mainstream. The mainstream divides everybody and literally frames the argument in a way where people only think about it in this siloed structure, where it's literally you're either being taxed enough or you're not being taxed enough. That's the extent of the discourse on a national level in the mainstream that this debate is. Like nobody talks about monetary policy.
Well, of course.
Like nobody talks about the monetary aspects of it. And that I would agree that's intentional. That's intentional. Like going back to like, is there a conspiracy? Like I would agree it is intentional. I would argue it is intentional because people don't want to highlight that like, hey, we're going to divide everybody and make them think that here's the problem. We're not being taxed enough or we're being taxed too much, where it may be, hey, your money's fucked at its core. And until you figure that out, you're not going to be able to fix anything that you're arguing about on this silo debate,
Definitely. Yeah, no, you're raising a very important point. I hope that they will hear us one day, but if they block their ears, they will be so loud that they will still
Right? Put
still
your
won't be
fingers in
able to
your
know.
ears, just scream like, "Oh no, this is all that matters."
Because it's just natural. It's like humans want to preserve their wealth, and it's fine. You shouldn't take it away from them. Why are you taking it away from them?
Right.
Leave them alone.
They worked hard.
They worked hard. They created value.
Right.
What do you want from them? Let them live in peace. So yeah, I think it has the ability to appeal to these people who are concerned with crony capitalism, because that is an issue to some extent, of course, and it has the ability to appeal to like basically improve the inequality, Gini coefficient, which has jumped highly jumped massively since 2008.
So this is one thing, like in 2008, as like an econ major, and I'm actually interested to hear your thoughts on this. Like, as soon as that happened, I was like in college, like, and working at Managed Futures Fund, sort of coming to understand monetary policy and the way central banks would manipulate the mechanisms of money creation and contraction, blah 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 blah. Like, when the Fed came out, like with TARP and QE1 and QE2 and QE3, like if you wanted to sort of diagnose whether or not your policies, or not diagnose, if you wanted to be able to measure whether or not your policies were being effective enough, I argued that you should not necessarily target Gini coefficient and velocity, but you should look at those metrics in particular. Like, hey, if your Gini's rising and the velocity of money is crashing at the same time, like maybe QE is not as effective as he thought it would be. And nobody looked at those two metrics in particular, but I did, like, throughout. So, and that's what like drove me away from finance as well, was like, all right, like they're not even targeting the metrics at which like would prove that their policies are effective. Like, they're not even following those, like a Gini coefficient, sort of showing that the wealth inequality is decreasing or increasing. That's something you probably want to look at if you're trying to sustain or fix the economy. And then velocity of money in particular, if you're going to print money and attempt to have it flow through the economy, you would expect the velocity to rise at least a certain percent. And what you found is that it fell precipitously. So the sort of solution to the problem proved to not solve the problem at all.
It's just pushing the problem further out.
Right?
Yeah, that's all.
Do you agree with that? Like, am I like, and this is something like I've only had like conversations with people, like side conversations and stuff like that. But is that like, I mean,
I think it makes
am
sense.
I rational? Like
I think it
believing
definitely
that you
makes
should have
sense.
looked at those metrics and like
Yeah.
they're never brought up.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think so. Like, I mean, it's a fact that like since the inception of the monetary system that we live in today, the inequality in the world has precipitously increased. Like, before we had all this like central planning type of policies that.
Yeah. So should we take a step back here and define Gini coefficient and velocity of money for the freaks who may not be as economically
Sure,
versed?
let's try to do that.
So Gini coefficient tries to measure the
Distribution.
of money, the wedge between the rich and the poor.
Mhm.
I believe a Gini index above 45 means you have a lot of inequality in your economy. And then velocity of money, which I think is actually maybe more important, tries to measure the rate at which money is
hands.
flowing through the economy from the money creation spigot. So you start from creating money at the Fed to getting it to the banks to lending out to a business to hiring employees who get paid and then spend that money in the economy. Like, you try to measure how fast the money is going from money creation to that food bagger spending that money at McDonald's or whatever. And what you found post 2008, post QE1, 2, 3, twist, blah blah blah, is like velocity completely collapsed, Gini index exploded. So like the solution to the problem just exacerbated the problem, it seemed, in my opinion.
I tend to agree.
Yeah.
For sure. So,
And that was talking economics and Tales from the Crypt. I don't brush off those economic skills every day, freaks.
I mean, they are prerequisite for the Bitcoin class.
Right.
So I think that there's many different ways that Bitcoin appeals to Like just the fact that it's a robust, undilutable savings vehicle. That's everyone needs that. The middle class, lower class, upper class, especially the middle and the lower class. Everyone needs that, and it's just like to conclude. It has the ability to level the financial playing field, open up opportunities, just like internet allowed people in very remote places to have access to all the different kinds of information. Now these people are going to have access to
value anywhere.
To value, yeah, exactly. To sending value, to creating value, to
traveling with it.
Exactly, yeah. And why, like, I know this is kind of like everyone has already talked about it, but like the people who don't have access to a bank account, like they are just cut off from a lot of opportunities, a lot of very relevant processes in our society, and that is fundamentally unfair. That shouldn't, because they not only unfair, it's also inefficient, because these people are capable of creating.
It's unfair to the developed world as well, right?
Because these people are able to specialize in something.
If you want as much people working on as many problems as possible.
Yeah, exactly.
To figure out, like, to speed up the pace at which we make our society perfect, which will never happen, but on the road to perfection, or towards perfection at least, like, you want as many minds trying to solve as many problems as possible. And
yeah, it's like international trade. It's all about comparative advantage rather than absolute advantage, and how even if the United States is better at producing literally anything in the world, literally anything than any other country, the fact that even if they have that absolute advantage, the fact that the United States is actually better at producing, I don't know, what is the United States good at producing?
Tech companies?
Yeah, the fact that they are even better at producing tech companies enables other countries that are worse at producing any kind of product than America as a whole. They are still, because they have the comparative advantage, because they are still, while America is doing the tech production, these guys are going to be doing something else, which they're worse than America at that. But because America is has so many resources allocated to doing something that they're the best at, like that is the thing that they specialize best in, let's say tech production of technology. Everyone else, those other guys, can be making money and creating value and making the world more efficient by having the comparative advantage in doing whatever else that America is still the best at, but not as good as in technology. So everyone can do something. Everyone can specialize in something, and we can, if you give them access to transacting and having an account with Bitcoin, then you don't need to have an account, but using Bitcoin, then the world can become once again a lot more efficient. A lot more time will be saved. A lot more waste is going to be eliminated. Yeah.
This is a very optimistic episode. We needed this one, especially in the depths of this bear market. We're 2.5 hours in. Yeah.
Yeah.
2:30 on the dot. Misir, this has been incredible. Do we have a parting note for the freaks? Have we hit all the notes? Like, what do we have to riff on here? I could go another half hour if you need to. Like, if we want to.
I think this will be plenty of time for your audience to listen to.
Hey, a lot of people listen at 1.5 speed, so you think it's going to be 3 hours? It turns out to be an hour 15. You know, like.
Yeah, true. I do that myself.
Yeah,
I'm guilty of that. I think that my parting note would be that in a world dominated by centralized mainstream media and social networks, PR is increasingly important, public relations, and Bitcoin does not, and hopefully will never have one PR team. So instead, every single person who cares about Bitcoin, who considers themselves a Bitcoiner, knowingly or unknowingly is a Bitcoin PR agent, and you are part of this movement, and you can accelerate by educating other people and explaining to them why it is not as clear cut, it's not as black or white as people say it is. It's actually more, I would definitely say that it's more white than black, in terms of like it's more positive than it's infinitely more positive impact it will have on the world. It has the potential to.
I tend to agree.
And you need to explain it to people, and you need to explain it you can't do it once. You can't just sit down and do it once. You need to do it like, every other time you need to bring it up and explain why, or give them some kind of accessible resource. And I think that
this is
just going to happen naturally.
No, and I completely 100%, 1,000%, 10,000% agree. And this is honestly why this podcast exists and the Ben exists.
I really have so much respect for you for having the tenacity to wake up every single morning and send out that newsletter, which everyone should subscribe to, Marty's Bent, and providing like the core information and the spreading of the knowledge and the news about the space. It's very, very valuable to a lot of us, and I'm sure I'm one of the many, many thousands of people who take great advantage of that resource.
Well, thank you for saying that. I hope it's not getting too repetitive. That's what I worry about these days, is like getting a little too repetitive. Bear market's not a lot to write for, but if I am going to speak from any sort of semblance of giving advice, it's just like the mentality I adopted was like, if not me, then who? Like, it's like,
I love that.
If not
nobody
me,
except for us, like,
if not me, then who? And that, and like for any of you freaks listening out there, like, you should adopt that mentality too. One day, my watch will be over, and somebody will have to pick up the torch and start talking. Like, I cannot do this forever.
Yeah.
I would like to. I hope I can do it for as long as possible. But like,
in a hyper Bitcoinized world, I'm sure you will be able to.
I would argue that a lot of people should just start internally looking into themselves, like, if not me, then who, and start applying what you think should exist into the world, start bringing it into the world. And I would argue, like, Marty's Bent and this podcast, though not perfect, and they just prove, like, hey, any Joe Schmo can put their voice out there, and people will not necessarily like listen and agree, but consider it and say, all right, maybe I'll think about this today or something like that.
Absolutely. And also, shout out to Matt Odell. I think that was a great initiative on your guys' side to launch the Rabbit Hole Recap, because although the individual episodes with people in the space are incredibly interesting, but like it's sometimes hard to be on top of all the news, and you guys are able to put that into an accessible form that is constant and that is weekly, which is great. And
huge shout out to Matt that does most of the legwork and putting together the topics that we talk about and sort of the theme of each episode. And that's something, thank you for saying that. And that's something like I realized, and that was, again, this whole process has been natural, is people were like, hey, we want like weekly updates. I was like, I'm not going to sit there and like read weekly updates to people. And luckily have Matt right in the neighborhood, and
he's a great guy.
We have good rapport, and it just makes sense, and I'm happy that you freaks are liking it. And so is Matt. Matt's like fucking incredible. Like the fact that I was able to nag him as a co-host is fucking incredible. He's a wealth of knowledge, and I'm very happy to have him on Team TFTC.
Thank you, Matt. We miss you here.
We do. He's on his way back, I think. I think he's in the air right now.
Cool.
It's been a great episode, man. I'm like debating in my mind right now. Do I post this right away, or do I have the patience to wait till Tuesday?
I mean, yeah, the engagement is higher on
I mean, the engagement will happen no matter what. The engagement happens no matter what. Like, just over time, people find it. Like, especially if you're subscribed, like eventually you'll get to it. I have put out a lot of content. I'm gonna wait till Tuesday. I think we can pump this over the weekend. We'll start teasing people over the weekend. I think that's what we'll do. So you ready to give your parting note, Misir? This has been a pleasure, man. It's been a great conversation.
It's been likewise an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I was looking forward to this when you first invited me. I thought that like I have stuff to say that, and I want to say it exactly here, nowhere else. Like I haven't, like I have a lot of articles that are not out yet, but do consist of many of the ideas that I've talked about today. But this is basically like a preview of a lot of those ideas, which I am very proud to present exactly here and exactly on your show.
Well, I'm flattered. That's all I'll say. I'm flattered. I love you, Misir.
And your brother, Marty.
The Mahmudov bloodline is strong.
You meme that into existence, right?
It is. It is very strong. So for you freaks that don't know or aren't following Misir on Twitter, follow him at Misir MISIR _ Mahmudov MAHMUDOV. Excuse me. Again, MISIR _ MAHMUDOV on Twitter. Kids only in college. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
21.
You're 21. You're only 21.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. This gives me hope. Like, this gives me hope.
Am I the youngest?
Yes, you are. Up to this point. I'm
I'm sure there'll be younger ones.
Maybe Yassine.
I think Yassine is older.
Might be a year older than you. But, yeah. Thanks for coming on, bro.
Thank you. Thank you for the invite. It was amazing.
It was incredible. Peace and love, freaks.